On the sneak, Pyle drives his way in. Touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
3rd and 16. Mahomes rolling out. Looking, firing, intercepted. Picked up by Cooper DeJean. Gets a block. DeJean is in. Touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Mahomes. Four-man rush over the middle. It's intercepted again. This time it's Zach Bond, and the Eagles are set up inside the 10.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Hurts lets it go. Complete A.J. Brown. He's in. Touchdown, Eagles.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Maddox comes in and makes a huge play. Now the Eagles get it back. We're going to run some clock, or maybe throw the dagger. Hurts going deep for it all. Devontae Smith. He has got it. Touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go, and it is a Friday, and happy Valentine's Day to those of you enjoying your Valentine's Day. I wore red because of, well, that was the color I picked out. I pick up my clothes usually on the night before, hang them in my car, and then do whatever I do. And so here we are on Valentine's Day. Hob Hal from GXG, by the way, in the studio. Good to see you. Take one of those seats in the back if you don't mind. Good to see you, Hob. Now, we have discussed this before because of the mess that is college football, the separation, so to speak, of the Power Four conferences, the dissolve of the Pac-12, and all the other changes about someone running college athletics, someone who is not the NCAA, someone who is not Baker, who's the president, somebody that may be new, fresh blood. They say this, hiring a CEO, investigative body, along with that to oversee the actions of the post-House settlement. It's never been done before. The NCAA has always been the ruling body. Can it work? Is it possibly neutral, objective enough to take on that job?
And look, I saw this tweet and I responded to it. Yeah, I'll do it. I mean, I think I could be it. Craig could be it. Soki, can you be neutral?
I mean, there's others that have been marketing themselves for this for like years now at this
Tim
point.
Brando.
Yeah.
He would love to do it.
That means he wouldn't get to do games anymore. So I don't know. He may not. So, but no, I think there's people out there that would do it. I think the biggest thing that it needs to be is someone who understands the functionality of the sports world as it's changing, not as they want it to be in the past, which I think is the reason for this. So I don't think that you're going to get somebody that's going to believe that they should go backward. They need to get somebody who will go forward with them and address it. What I hope is that they don't do the thing where they're going to hire somebody that doesn't have everyone's best interest at heart. But if it's the Power Four commissioners, then he's pretty much going to answer to those four, which makes me concerned for everybody else, which ultimately, like, I know that there could be a day where they break off and it's the super conference or whatever, but I just see college football eventually working into the two tiers of the Power Four and everyone else. And I think that's, especially if the Power Four commissioners are going to be the one hiring the CEO, then that's where they're going to try to point it.
Well, I mean, the thing about splitting off and doing the whole super conference thing, which I don't think you rule out entirely in the distant future, is there's a lot of loopholes that jump through, a lot of things that you benefit from having all of those other schools like March Madness, right? It'd be difficult to just split off and go, hey, this is the SEC Big Ten National Championship Tournament. I'm sure some people would buy that. A lot of people would, because a lot of people root for those conferences. But there's just things like that where it's not just black and white on, we're breaking off and here's this new entity. So they kind of need the other two. And the Power Four conferences, I do think that's notable, are in together on this endeavor because right now they're still together. But I still think that if you're the ACC or the Big 12, you're constantly looking over your shoulder. And how could you not be? After Texas, Oklahoma, I would never trust anybody again. I think you can work alongside people and you can trust them to a certain extent, but I would always be wary of that knife in my back by Greg Sankey. Or maybe even more so, by the other commissioner who's a lot quieter, who we don't talk about nearly as much. He might even be the more dangerous one because his conference is actually the one that's kind of leading the way in a lot of the different categories right now and winning in football, back-to-back national championships. But, yeah, I mean, it's notable. If you're a Big 12 fan, that you feel like you're still part of this, and if you're the ACC, you still feel like you're part of this and part of that upper echelon, so to speak. I think the part about this commissioner gig, though, is this is not you fantasy booking college football and like you get to do cool stuff like I'm going to make the tournament like this and I'm going to do this. It's like, no, you're going to make sure the house settlement goes through properly and that schools are functioning the correct ways. And so this isn't like having your most fun parts of what you would like to do at the job and you just do that. Like, you've got to do a lot of the minutia and a lot of the probably other business-like stuff behind the scenes. So I don't know who checks all of those boxes. I know there's plenty of people that could say, here's how we're crowning the national champion, because we've all done that in our heads. We've all come up with our own version of the playoff. There's lots of people who could say, this is the date that we're starting and this is how the calendar works. And we do need somebody to firmly establish that and get that on good footing and just kind of good across the board. And so those types of things, certainly you need some devil in the details and need to work on. But there's a lot of that other stuff, the stuff that I don't find as enjoyable to talk about, quite frankly, that is going to come with this job as well. So who can do the CEO gig, the get in the room with lawyers gig, who can do the listen to coaches gig and all those types of things? I don't know. Nick Saban's a guy that...
And give the time up, yeah.
And, yeah, I guess give the time up as well, whatever that may be. And, whatever you're doing right now, your time's maybe being a coach or maybe it's being retired or maybe it's being in the media. Nick Saban has been all those things in the last couple years. But anybody else, for that matter, you're going to have to give a lot of your time up and you're going to have to be a great listener. And so there are some qualifications that come with this job, and it's unique because we've never seen this job before. And so it's a very interesting little story that we've been sort of expecting, but where it goes from here, I don't quite know.
You mentioned Nick Saban in the story. After talking to sources, these 5 names would make sense to fill the CEO role. Oliver Luck. He has been in a lot of different places. Former player, AD, has been a part of a lot. It just doesn't seem like he sticks anywhere. Nick Saban, he was mentioned. His transition to ESPN has been a revelation. Gone from GOAT, college coach, to now college football influencer. And when Nick Saban talks, I listen. I do. Now, I saw some bias from him, though. Being a part of the SEC, there were times he slipped into that all 16 of our teams are better than anybody else's top 2 or 3. Not quite that, but I did see a little bit of that. He would have to eliminate that walking in the door.
I don't know if he can. I mean, he's like that to me is a pretty severe conflict of interest. If I'm the other 3 and I have a guy who believes that the sun rises and sets with one of us, then I don't want that. Because he does. And everybody's got flaws, but...
Well, doesn't everybody really, no matter what position you have, doesn't everybody have some sort of bias because of where you lived or worked or what you like?
Nobody's completely unbiased, and we all have our biases, but I think, like, when you're looking at this job, that's a pretty clear conflict of interest when you think about who, is running the thing, and when it comes down to who has his ear the most, well, that's going to be Greg Sankey. And it might wind up being it anyway, but I think you need to start out with someone who Greg Sankey already doesn't have a substantial lead with. I mean, it's if it would be like giving Alabama
sometimes
a 14-point
when Saban talked
lead.
during the ESPN game day, he sounded like Greg Sankey.
Yeah. So it would be like, look, you're already playing Alabama, but then you're like, oh, by the way, they're already up 14-0 before we've kicked it off. That's my problem with giving this job to Nick Saban. My other problem with it is he's in his 70s. Like this, I would like this to be someone that has a 10 to 15 year look at this.
Don't you know we only elect like 80-year-olds for the highest positions of power nowadays?
Yeah, I guess so,
like,
yeah.
he's too young for the job probably and for leadership. No,
He's also stepping away from the game because I do think that some of the new parts of the game have kind of not spooked him, but he did not want to have to play that game.
Well, I don't know that he'd want to leave game day and do all of that.
Yeah,
I think he's got a pretty
popular
comfy
as ever
gig. I mean,
before.
why would you want to have to go get into the minutia and the mud of dealing with house and applying all these things unless it's just a passion of yours? So, I mean, we don't need to get hung up on Nick Saban. He's a name mentioned. He's not the only name. He won't be the only guy that they eye for this. But I do think that in that article by Dennis Dodd talking about this, that Mitt Winter, the attorney, who we've talked to on a couple of occasions, brought up a good point, and this is the thing they're going to have to answer first, is who's going to be unselfish about this?
Mm-hmm.
These are the most selfish, greedy people in the world. I mean, I take that back. They're not that level, but they are reminiscent of some of the most greedy people in the world. These are the people who you had to basically pry out of their cold, dead hands NIL money for athletes, and they waited till the absolute last second until the court said, no, you have to pay these people or else this whole thing gets burned down, to finally do something about it. And then they played woe is me. Oh, well, we can't afford, and it's been a whole song and dance for like 2 years, and so finally they're starting to get their way where now the schools can be directly involved. But these are the type of people that are in leadership that we're talking about. These are also the type of people, to Mitt Winter's point of, hey, let's all play by these rules. Report comes out, Florida's busted because they're, and I'll just use Florida as an example, just first team that popped in my head. Oh, well, they're going around this rule and around that rule. And then the moment they get busted for it and you go to penalize them, what do? They turn around and they sue the NCAA, who they are a part of and whose rules they helped create and agree upon. And then now they sue, as soon as they get in trouble for these rules that they were a part of and agreed to, they call a lawsuit. And we've seen this time and time again with schools who are all part of the NCAA, who apparently want these types of guardrails as well. But then once they're under the bullseye, they suddenly want to play, let's go to court, and we win, and we don't get penalized. So how are these people all going to come together and agree on rules when every time they try to enforce a rule, whoever's on the other end of it sues, and then that...
Yeah.
So how do you enforce anything?
And I do think that there are some schools, if they're faced with let's say there's 5 schools with the same penalties, recruiting, tampering, whatever it might be. I don't even know if you could have recruiting penalties anymore except tampering. And that's been going on and probably will continue to do so. I still will not trust a group or a person that when you have Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Oklahoma in front of the NCAA, in front of their infractions committee, and Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and it's maybe Arizona, which is a big school, are they going to be as even-handed when it comes to any kind of discipline?
Well, I don't think we need to all dwell on, too, though, like the favoritism thing. Like, there's definitely bias. Like, we know that. We know that TV networks have bias. They pay more for certain leagues. Well, that's somewhat explainable. Those are the biggest programs. They have the biggest audiences, the most money, and so you understand that to an extent. That's why I said for, like, the Big 12, for example, whenever this TV stuff gets brought up, it's like it's not about adding more teams. It's about winning and becoming popular brands, and I know that's very hard to do. So maybe just add is the long answer to scrounging together a few more dollars. I think it's win-win-win, and that's how you raise. Like if Arizona State had won, that would have been so much bigger for the Big 12 than anything else they could have possibly done. And unfortunately, they fell just short. But we can't sit there and worry about, well, what if they love Alabama too much? Because then we're just going to be frozen in non-decision making. And so, yeah, there's going to be biases. There's going to be certain things here and there. But I think my question or my thing I just brought up is far bigger of a worry than, what if Nick Saban likes Tennessee too much? It's like, well, how are you all going to actually operate when you've never been able to operate? And before you try to boogeyman the NCAA, you are the NCAA. You are the boogeyman.
You're the one that approves the rules the NCAA tries to enforce. Yeah. David Shaw is a name that was interesting. We're not going to go over everybody, but here's Condoleezza Rice, who's been on that college football playoff committee, Rick Neuheisel. His name was interesting because he faced some infractions when he was the head coach at Washington. And then one of the names that I think Mac Brown, who we had on just, 3-4 weeks ago after we retired, as somebody that might be somewhat interested, at least a name that could be discussed.
Again, Mac just runs into the thing of like, he's in his golden years. Like, let the guy enjoy something before we throw him, unless he wants to do that. But I also want him to be back on television because I thought he was really good when he was. But Yeah, I like the Rick Neuheisel thing is very interesting to me, as is David Shaw. David Shaw's, obviously when you're the coach at Stanford, you can't just be a throw ball, catch ball, tackle dude coach, which you run across them, not too often anymore, but brilliant guy. Same with Rick Neuheisel, really, really smart guy. I'm intrigued by those, but when you talk about coaches, do they have the media savvy? Maybe Rick Neuheisel, who's been in the media for a while, might know those things, but that's the other thing is how do you help guide these media deals moving forward? I'm
just curious, why do you like Rick Neuheisel so much?
It's intriguing to me because he's been out of the game for a little while. He's been in the media. But again, it's not like he was some kind of stellar coach.
He's definitely not to the level of any of the other guys that we mentioned in terms of career. Yeah,
but I think he has himself propped himself up a couple.
I don't think he's nowhere near the level of the guy.
I guess maybe I'm intrigued by the idea of someone in the vein of a Rick Neuheisel who's coached, who's maybe not been the coach at Alabama or Texas or A&M or I'm saying all SEC schools or Ohio State. Yeah. That's not a coach at one of the behemoths. That was, he was at UCLA. Is it Washington? Those are big enough schools. Colorado.
I saw somebody bring up Bob Stoops. I think he's too busy having fun coaching like rec league football, minor league football, and shilling tequila. I think he's really enjoying his post-coaching life, so I don't know that he would be apt for the job, whatever that job is.
He shows up to interviews in Tommy Bahama
shirts. I don't think he's really trying to be sitting in an office all day going over the minutia of NIL deals and whatnot. I think he'd rather spend his time doing something else, and I would as well if I was him. So, there's going to be a lot of names. It doesn't have to be an ex-coach either.
And, that's true. The other thing about Bob Stoops is if he wanted a hard job again, he could have easily just taken the Oklahoma job back.
Yeah, instead of just the
Riley
game.
Left.
Yeah. And I think would have done well. Mm-hmm. We're going to do the OTA story, Garrett, later. We have that 4 o'clock spot now might be open, so I think we'll do that about something Chris Kleiman brought up to us back during Big 12 Media Days in July in Vegas about changing the spring schedule. So we'll have that story and that discussion at around 4. The Frank Broyles Award winner goes to the top assistant coach in college football. He's no longer in college football, but there's Al Golden, defensive coordinator for a great run that Notre Dame had. I watched some of the speeches. His is one of them. I saw Pete Kwiatkowski from Texas and a few others. Very, very emotional night for a lot of these coaches who were up for awards, who had won them before. And Al Golden of Notre Dame, now with Cincinnati in the NFL, is the Broyles assistant coach of the year.
When you want to pay somebody a compliment, write down what Al Golden said about Notre Dame last night when they asked him what it meant to be part of Notre Dame. He's like, it's the best 1,000 days of my career. That was a pretty heavy compliment when the guys. Yeah. I mean, he's been at other places. Now, look, I know as a head coach, being at Miami and then where he was Miami could have been fun, but it was a stressful time for that program and for Al Golden. But yeah, he's very deserving. That Notre Dame defense was just punishing. Even though Ohio State kind of rolled it up on him for a minute, I guarantee you they walked out of there feeling it for sure because that's how they played. And the Bengals will be better off for it, I think. So, yeah, very deserving. There were several coaches that were very deserving, but I thought Al Golden certainly earned that award.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool that he was appreciative of it. And he's an NFL guy, so he's back in the NFL. I mean, the last decade of his career, he spent 3 years with Notre Dame, and those were all 3 very good years, obviously, that were immensely successful, but not surprising that he'd be back in the NFL because that's where he was spending most of his time for several years before jumping back into the college game. So we'll see how he does with the Bengals. I think it's a really interesting and on paper a good hire. And, yeah, I mean, the awards keep getting doled out even though the season ended, about a month ago now? Has it only been a month?
January 20-something, right?
Wow, it's been less than a month. God, that feels like forever ago that Ohio State won. But, yeah, the awards still roll on, so that's cool to see for him. And a year that Notre Dame certainly wishes would have ended differently, but one that was mightily successful. I think only doubled down on their independence and created a new monster in just the terms of the money that they made in comparison to their competitors. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see where Marcus Freeman takes this, and he's going to have some, big shoes to fill there with Al Golden. So, yeah, that's a nice nod for him and deserved.
Sam Conn around the corner from theathletic.com. Grayson Grunaper We'll have Sul Ross football coach Lee Hayes in an interesting story. He's coached in Houston, at Baylor, at Texas Tech. Bob Thompson will join us on that YouTube TV negotiations with Paramount Plus, and also CBS and more. That kind of got some people a little bit upset last night. He'll join us at 5. Paul's top 5, and also we'll look at Baylor's schedule, A, B, C, D, E, F, when we go through the alphabetical.
Were you shocked that I had Lee Hayes trivia last night?
Yeah, no, I was. And there's a couple of notes about him personally that's pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, he was a Marine?
He was a sniper in the Marines.
Yeah,
yes.
Marines. He was a Marine sniper. And he was brought in by Guy Morris to kind of install spread offense here. And everybody, like when he got here, everybody was a dead man walking. So it was hard. I don't think they quite had the personnel. And then I think it was 2 years that he was gone.
Well, his first year there, though, Baylor's offense had some success.
Yeah.
Sean Bell was their quarterback at the time. Speaking of Notre Dame, Mike Martin is now their general manager. Comes from the Detroit Lions to replace Chad Bowden, who's left. And he now that's the job. Remember, they were looking around, including James Blanchard at Texas Tech. Mike Martin, part of that great run that Lions are losing a lot of people on their staff. But they gained one because, of course, they continue to find ways. Remember Tashard Choice of Texas, the running backs coach, going up to the Lions. Also, this is a name that a lot of people know, whether you're from Texas or not, but Penn State, Stan Drayton, one of the better coaches, assistant coaches, has been named the coach at Penn State. He was at Temple with Fran Brown. He's been at Texas, among other places. He now is headed to Penn State.
Yeah, those are a couple interesting hires. Look, when you're part of the group that made the Lions not only successful, but like super fun to watch and built for the future, you're going to get other job opportunities. Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson gone. And this is if you want to be a big-time GM, you've been at the Lions. Now you get to go to Notre Dame and help them install what is now going to look like an NFL GM. Usually, the general manager, when it was first brought about, was more or less a guy who kind of kept the recruiting in line in the way of, okay, these are the guys we need to go after. It wasn't like an NFL job. Now it's pretty much exactly that. With less structure. So you're going to need somebody who knows it coming in there. And Stan Drayton walks in. The running back jobs that are open, if I wanted to be a running backs coach, Penn State would be one of the first places I go because of Singleton and Allen.
Yeah, they got both of their starters coming back.
Yeah, it's not hard to coach those guys.
Yeah, I don't know much about Mike Martin other than he's from the NFL, and we've talked about the rise of the GM plenty of times to not rehash it. So, yeah, we'll see what that looks like and see how much that continues to be a position that pops up at pretty much every school around the country that's trying to play big-time competitive football. But, yeah, I mean, a guy who's obviously very well qualified, and you like the success that Detroit's had, so we'll see how that works for them. And then Stan Drayton, I mean, a name that we've been talking about around football for my entire life, basically, it feels like, and he's a really great coach, well accomplished, been around a lot of big-time places, both in college and the pros. So an interesting hire there. And I know with the UT's opening, obviously you saw some people maybe float the idea of Stan Drayton going back there, but instead he's going to be going to Penn State. And you said as the coach, he's as a running backs coach to be specific.
I thought I said he's the best running back.
No, you said the coach, but obviously James Franklin there and is having to make some moves, and they've been very busy early on in this offseason. Penn State has. They look like they're going to be the Ohio State or Ole Miss of this offseason cycle. Them and Texas Tech, I think, are like the two programs who have been the busiest, making the most splashes here early on. So seems like a good hire, and as Paul said, he's got two great running backs that are going to probably make him look really good. So that ought to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Aaron Joe is going to be the new director of scouting for the University of Texas. He's been at Georgia Tech. He's been at Alabama. He comes to UT. Aaron Joe is the new director of scouting. I think that's about it for now. We will have Sam Kahn here in just a moment. There is the one note about Alabama-Auburn, that basketball game tomorrow. I know that they said it's the first time in the SEC history, number one against number two, but even throughout the great history of Alabama and Auburn in football, and usually it would have been Alabama, that Auburn's had a run now. They've won national titles. They have never played as number one against number two during the football version of Alabama and Auburn, which they'll do that tomorrow in college basketball. You listen to Bruce Pearl talk about that game and what it means. Like he's saying, think about the history of the SEC when they had Kentucky and so many, Florida, good team, great teams in some ways, but no one's ever been number 1 and 2.
It's never been like this. Usually SEC basketball greatness, like a great Florida team, came at the expense of a bit of a disappointing Kentucky team. They haven't, basketball-wise, been like this for a long time, and I would say that like the ACC or the Big 12 or the Big East or the Pac-12, where you have a bunch of good teams at one time, they've had like 2 or 3, but there's like a gap. Like they have the number 1 team, they have the number 9 team, they have the number 16 team. Never like 1, 2, 4, 5,
right.
7, 9, like the way they are right now. And so this is a huge deal. I think it's also a huge deal that it's Alabama and Auburn and not Kentucky and Florida, even though, both those teams are really good. I think it's, for the SEC, for new basketball blood.
No, it is, because Nate Oates at Alabama and what, of course, Pearl's done for Auburn.
I've told y'all, like, as far as my interest level in college basketball and kind of how it, ebbs and flows, it's like a roller coaster. Just certain sports, you get older, certain things you like more than you did back when you were younger, vice versa, things like that. As somebody who's just kind of like looking forward to March as much as anything in conference tournaments and that type of deal, that's not like a sicko. This is a regular season game I'm like all about. Call me a casual fan or whatever. I am like all about watching what this atmosphere looks like tomorrow and what this game turns out to be. So I think they should pop a pretty good rating. I'd be interested to see how many eyeballs they draw in, because college basketball pulls good numbers, but they don't necessarily pull like, oh, wow, look at that college basketball regular season number. I think this is a game that might have people talking about how many people watch this game, because it's so unique and it's these two bitter blood rivals. So I think they'll pull in some people that otherwise might not be interested. I think it will be as heated of an atmosphere as it can possibly be between these two teams, and that should make for some great basketball. So, yeah, hopefully this is better executed game-wise than the other big games that have been built up lately, like the national championship, which turned out to be a total dud, and the Super Bowl, which turned out to be a total dud. This game's been like the second or third, like the next most hyped game that I feel like I've heard about in recent times, and hopefully this one's actually able to go wire to wire and be entertaining. And if it is, I think it could be one of those things we're definitely talking about come Monday.
Both play. Sometimes it's frenetic. Sometimes they make you look so stupid because they're so athletic and they can bounce. They got length and angular. So that'll be fun tomorrow. So there's a note about that, despite the great history they've had in football. Happy birthday to Chad Haynes, and we're going to Sam Conn next. Happy Valentine's Day. A cold beer in my hand here on my birthday, overcast here in Louisville. So listening to us, Chad, happy birthday and happy Valentine's Day.
That's my guy, Chad.
Chad?
Yeah, we talk.
In
Yeah.
Louisville.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, Sam Conn, theathletic.com, his thoughts about this, can they really get somebody that like runs college football outside the NCAA? What would his options be? And also the thought about OTA, spring drills changing this coming up soon. Appreciate your time today in the studio today. This is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, LowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Want to be, you may not feel the same. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. A lot of times you hear about your sex drive, ED, your love life, your moods, and all that. It also could just be you don't feel right. Your energy's bad. You're pretty healthy. You're fit. You have a great diet, but you've maybe gained a couple of pounds around your waist, or something's missing. You don't sleep as well. A lot of things that contribute to that, but low testosterone can too. Dr. Petty and his staff, contact them at pettycliniclowt.com. Tell them I sent you, and they can get your blood work by setting it up, taking care of that appointment, getting your blood levels and your work, looking at them, digesting them, and then Dr. Petty will contact you. Maybe it's fine. And he's also a family doctor too, but maybe your testosterone level is fine. But if it is low, if it's dropped or it's dropping, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be at pettycliniclowt.com.
month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $15,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable value? Drive home a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995, or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Sam Conn, theathletic.com. There he is. We've missed you for the last, couple of weeks. You grind throughout the football season. Of course, it never ends. It's like the NFL now, 12 months a year. What did you get away? Did you go on some little sneak away trip or anything?
I wish. I've got 2 kids in school, so I can't go anywhere until spring break. So I caught up on the rest of my personal life here in this house and did some overdue cleaning of my office. It may not look like it in the back there, but did some overdue cleaning of that and just trying to get my personal life in order. So because that, especially once we hit December and the portal opens and the playoff begins, everything that isn't those 2 things kind of goes to the back burner.
Sam, a lot of things in the kind of in the ether right now when it comes to college football. One of them is the impending death of spring football. Like I don't think it's an if anymore; it's a when. Do you think that maybe by next year we're at OTAs?
I wouldn't rule it out. Certainly, as I talk to people, and I've been talking to a lot of different coaches this last week, actually. Along those lines, I hope to do something in the next few weeks or month on this topic. There's definitely a sentiment that we should push toward more of an NFL model of getting rid of spring football, stop putting on the pads in spring, because as long as there is an April transfer portal window, what you trot out in spring is not your team. That is, there could be, depending on how active you are or how many players you lose, you could have 20 players interchanged from spring to when you enroll in summer classes in June and July. So I think there is going to continue to be this push. And as long as there are multiple transfer portal windows or that window exists in the spring, there's going to continue to be a push for this. And I think the Matt Rule comment that he made about Nebraska canceling their spring game because players are poached, a lot of the coaches I've talked to feel like that's a little overblown. Not to say that coaches are not looking at spring games to scout, but a lot of these evaluations are done off game tape. not necessarily spring tape. Certainly you could see a backup pop. The one that I think of was a couple years ago. Malik Murphy at Texas had a really good spring game because we had no tape on him the year before. And then all of a sudden he got a lot of attention in the portal. Actually wasn't in the portal, but he got tampered with and never did enter the portal until the following winter. But that seems to be an exception. I think just in general, the utility of spring football as the calendar's gotten later is starting to be outlived. Also, when you think of the teams that just played for a national championship, or you think of teams that just played in the semifinals, and we're talking about getting them back on the field in 2 months, it seems a little ridiculous, to be honest with you. So I do think we'll be better if we get toward an OTA model and doing maybe freshman mini camp, kind of like they do rookie mini camp, and then we do a mini camp for veterans. And then in June, when you have most of your roster set, which you should by that time, then you can start to do a little bit more padded type stuff.
It's been a few days, Sam, but you had written about this, and I think we had talked about it maybe previously, but James Blanchard staying at Texas Tech. They come to an agreement after the overtures from Notre Dame. We talked a good bit about Texas Tech yesterday, and just that they're all in, and they're hyping it up, and they're embracing it, if anything. I mean, they're saying, like, yeah, this is all in for us. But in this day and age where we're seeing these GM hires more often and interesting names being floated around out there, how big of a deal do you think this was for Texas Tech, and just your thoughts on him deciding to stay in Lubbock?
Yeah, I think it was big. I think it was big from an imaging standpoint more than anything.
Yeah.
If they had lost James Blanchard, it certainly would have been a big loss because he has been so integral in putting this roster together, one that they hope will take them to a Big 12 championship game this year and maybe even the college football playoff. And I know some people will say, well, we're making all this hubbub and spending all this money on, a program that hasn't really won more than 8 games. True, but they are still in a better 3-year stretch than they have been since the Mike Leach era. This is a program, while not great or elite, they are certainly on better footing than they have been in a long time. Joey McGuire is a big reason for that, and James Blanchard is a big reason for that because of the roster they put together. So I think they would have been able to find another GM that would have been accomplished, that would have been very good, and they would have done a fine job. But Blanche and Joey are really tight. They're very much in lockstep. He was the first hire that Joey McGuire made when he got to Lubbock. He was the guy on the plane when Joey landed to take the job. I think that's very important, and I think that symbiotic relationship is really important in this day and age with a coach and whoever's managing the roster. I talked to James earlier this week. He said he called it the toughest decision of his life. And he said when Marcus Freeman first called that his inclination, he was going to take the job, but that he wanted to see it through, that there was, he's got family down here. He's got roots down here. And he said that even if they would have gone and won the national championship at Notre Dame, he still would have been sad because he would have not seen what he called his Frankenstein come to life in Lubbock, because this team, the last 3 years, has been built by him and Joey and that personnel staff with Brian Nance and Sean Kinney, all those guys. And they've all been there this whole time. And this is kind of the culmination. They had 2 top 25 recruiting classes. Now they have a top 5 portal class. And this is it. They're putting all the chips in on this run. They got 2 high-priced coordinators. This is the year to see it happen and come through. And I think he really wants to see that through. And that was what I got the sense from him, is that leaving that behind was going to leave him with at least a little bit of buyer's remorse. And he was going to wonder what if he didn't see this thing all the way through.
Yeah, and we're going to start having some coaches, et cetera, on here pretty soon as far as with spring drills, not that far away, depending on which team and when they start. But, yeah, they talked a lot 2 years ago when they ended well, and it didn't start but they kind of were more disappointed, even though they've been to a bowl game every year with Joey. This year was a little bit more consistent. Obviously, the loss at home to Baylor is something that hurt. But they do seem to be that thing that they've never played for the Big 12 title, and you were in that order, that is killing them right now.
Yeah, it's real. It's real, and that's why I mentioned this when we did the story last week, and when he decided to stay, I said it's easy to look at the 23-16 record over the last 3 years and be underwhelmed. But that's the best 3-year stretch they've had since Leach was there. This is not a program that is a consistent championship program, and they are trying to elevate themselves in class from middle of the pack Big 12 program to consistent conference championship contender. They're not there yet. They haven't even played for the title game, but they at least are now on a footing where they're going to bowl games every year. That is a start. And getting back to that is getting back to what they were in the Leach era. Getting back to what if they can have a sustained run of success that they did in the Leach era, then you're talking. Then you're actually talking about a program that's relevant. And in this Big 12 with no Texas and Oklahoma, a program of the Leach caliber that we saw in the 2000s, that's one that can win a Big 12 championship. If Texas and Oklahoma didn't exist back then, Mike Leach would have a few Big 12 championship rings on his fingers.
Yeah. This is the first, of course, Mike Leach was able to bust through it's West Texas wall because he was an innovator and he was Mike Leach and he was just somebody you'd want to play for. And between Mike Leach and Joey McGuire, nobody did that. They were getting pummeled by the big thing of, well, it's so far out there. It's West Texas. And so this is a group that's committed. It seemed from the beginning, every time we talked to Joey about, no, this is a college just like any other college program. Most colleges are in little towns in the middle of nowhere. So come because it's awesome. Don't come because but come because it's not that. It's very interesting to me how they've attacked that particular narrative.
No doubt. And, I talked to Cody Campbell about this. You guys obviously know that name. They're head of their NIL collective, and he's on the board of Regents. He's a mega donor, big name out there. Cody has said and told me, I think when we talked this winter about the portal class, that the way that opposing schools recruit against Texas Tech from a location standpoint actually works out in their favor, because he said they undersell it so much that when players get there, they expect it to be just dirt and tumbleweeds. And so then when you show up and you see the Womble Football Center and you see the indoor and you see the new South End Zone facility, it's like, wow, this is actually pretty nice. It's actually pretty cool. And then you back that up with the fact that now they are as well funded, certainly in this class, as almost anybody in the country from an NIL standpoint. From a roster standpoint, this is going to probably be, I think Max Olson published it last week or earlier this week. They spent more than $10 million on the portal class alone. And when you consider that all the other guys on the roster are getting paid already, you could be looking at a $20 million roster. We heard that number thrown around with Ohio State. I assume, I don't know the financials on all their other ones, but I would assume we're not going to be far away from it. And when we get to the rev share era, that's the cap, is the $20.5 million is what we're estimating. Tech is going to be at that cap. That's where they're going to play, because the Matador Club and Cody Campbell are invested in that way. So you combine that, okay, it's not as bad as everybody who is not there sells it as, and then you add in the facilities, and then you add in, they're going to pay you top market. They were beating out SEC schools and Big Ten schools for transfers in December. That is unheard of. And the bigger reason for that, in addition to all those other things, is that they were paying top dollar. They were willing to play the game from an NIL standpoint. So you add all that, and then you add a coach who is very charismatic, who is very energetic, who I think is easy to get along with, personable guy. And so you have a really good face for the program on top of it. So you have really all the pieces you need from that standpoint. So in that way, that is what has made them successful in this last portal class and in recruiting.
Sam, do you have an ideal overseer of college football? I mean, we were talking a little bit about the dot article. And everybody's talked about a college football commissioner, czar, leader, whatever term you want to use at some point or another. But it does sort of seem like there's an overhaul coming, especially when it pertains to the power conferences, quote unquote. Nick Saban's a name, obviously, that gets thrown out there. But is there somebody that comes to mind? Because it's not going to be just giving rah-rahs and, just being a figurehead. There's some real work that has to be done and some real legal business and some rules that have to be enforced. And can teams who already comprise the NCAA and create these rules only to get popped for these rules and then sue actually operate under a structure when they can't operate under the current one? So I know that's a lot there, but I think you understand where I'm coming from here.
Yeah, I don't have a specific person. I have a type of person, and I think of a former pro sports commissioner, someone who's dealt with all these things before, because in the NFL or the NBA or in Major League Baseball, you have to deal with all these issues. And now they're a little bit different because they have collective bargaining. I don't know that we'll ever get to that in college football, but at least you have an organized structure. You have a calendar, and you have certain rules and guidelines that everyone has to follow. And so I think somebody of that ilk, I don't like the former coach model, because I feel like the former coach model will end up just doing what the coaches want. And I don't like a current conference commissioner, because they're going to serve the interest. Because if it's a current conference commissioner, we know where that's going to go. It's going to be either Tony Petitti or Greg Sankey. And the way that they have conducted themselves in the last year plus doesn't make me believe that they're going to look out for the greater good of everybody in FBS or in Division I. And so I don't want to go that way either. I think someone who has been a pro sports commissioner, who has dealt with these levels of issues, but you also have to be able to navigate the legal side of this and the student side of this. So that it's a unique part of it. But you would have to have a pro sports commissioner with a strong staff, and there would be nothing wrong with having a Saban as part of maybe a deputy, and maybe some other people, university presidents, other people who've been part of the system and understand it. But I think the leader has to be someone that's not necessarily attached to the current model, but knows what the finished product looks like.
It's a lot on the plate, man. Here we have this settlement around the corner, the Title IX decision or ruling that came in earlier this week. And then the OTAs that might become a deal, which I think is a great idea. Chris Kleiman brought that up to us back in the summer. And then this, maybe a football czar or someone like that. But great stuff, Sam, as always. So what is next for you? Waiting for the portal to open back up, or any kind of synopsis? We're going through each team in the Big 12's, just their schedule and a little bit. No projections or whatever, but what's next for you?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time on the phone this month, just catching up with people, coaches and staffers, and people who I haven't talked to, athletic directors, over the course of the last couple of months. Because like I said, when the portal opened and the college football playoff began, those were the two things my attention was focused on. So I'm spending a lot of time this month just catching up with those folks. And we'll be, obviously, spring football, we'll keep an eye on it. I don't think we cover it quite the same way we used to, just because I feel like it's fallen down in importance a little bit, but we'll definitely keep an eye on it. And then also prepping for the April portal window, because that's when the next round of player movement will be. So I'll spend some time doing that as well. And all of us are prepping for this House settlement. And if and when it gets approved in early April, preparing some coverage and stories along those lines. So plenty to do, and plenty on the docket for the next 6 weeks, 2 months.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and keep getting back to what you need to take care of personally, and also some of the rearranging, I'm sure, stuff around the house that the wife wants you to do. And, of course, those two great kids. Coming up, Grayson Grundhofer. He covers Baylor recruiting, covers their football and basketball too. Grayson joins us. He's next. This is 365 Sports. I was mentioning this a minute ago. Hob Hal, who's here with us from GXG, one of our sponsors, about what are you doing tonight? Like, what are your plans tonight for Valentine's? Are you going to take whoever your Valentine, or maybe just by yourself, enjoy it yourself, to a nice steakhouse or a nice seafood restaurant, a hibachi-type place, or Mexican food? I don't know. But I do know this, that tonight, Valentine's dinner available at the Baylor Club. From 5 p.m. until 8:30, $78 per person. You can even get in. There should be some room available, although talking to Mike Mosel and the Baylor Club, this thing is sold pretty well, as you can imagine. The executive chef taking you on a culinary journey, showcasing the most exquisite ingredients, flavors that tantalizes your taste buds, and also set the mood for a truly magical dinner and evening. Refined atmosphere, impeccable service, crafted the perfect setting to celebrate your love on Valentine's Day tonight. Also, reservations are required. So if you're going to go, you need to call them now. Got a little bit of room to maybe get your name in to have a table for two or whatever it might be. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium off I-35 in Waco.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate muscle, brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select Choice and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
365 Sports on this Valentine's Friday. Hope you're doing well. I saw a note that the 2027 Super Bowl is going to be held on the same day as Valentine's Day, the 14th. So that's a 2-year warning to kind of get all your stuff together for that. Grayson Grunhafer, Sikkim365.com, recruiting analyst and director and all the other things he does with the co-hosting of the Bearcast and more. Grayson, I got to tell you, we were in New Orleans last week, and I don't know if we've even asked you about this. I don't think so because we didn't have you, but the Ashton Hawkins news, when that came down, I was like, I didn't know he was asking for another year. How critical for a position where they have some depth, but they lost some experience, how critical is him coming back? Is he coming back?
It's a huge storyline, and it was one of those things when Baylor kind of opened the transfer portal process. We saw them go out and get Kobe Prentice from Alabama, saw them go get Cole Wilson from Texas State. But it was clear that they still kind of had more work to do. They were targeting some other guys. A&M's Noah Thomas was a name that popped up. There were a few others as well who Baylor was looking at. And at the end of the day, they were able to get this extra year because of that new JUCO ruling due to the Diego Pavia case there at Vanderbilt. It basically is a blanket rule that allows JUCO guys to have essentially an extra year and an opportunity to go, make NIL money or whatnot. But this ended up being a huge storyline because it was still a position of need for Baylor. And it was something they were going to have to address if they didn't get Ashton Hawkins back. And so as time progressed, as the spring semester started, there became more rumblings that this was a possibility. And, for Baylor to get a guy like this back, I mean, now you turn around and look at it and go, wow, look at what they're returning as pass catchers. When you see Josh Cameron, Ashton Hawkins, and Michael Trigg, you got 3 guys who were, probably your top 3 pass catchers last year. So you're really, they're really in a good place now. I think when you talk about a guy who's been in an air raid scheme for a long time and has been coached by Jake Spavital for a long time, you're having a guy that's going to come in and you know exactly what you're going to get from him at the position. I also think his versatility to play outside is really key in all of this as well. Just because Kobe Prentice hasn't really shown that he can do that. He hasn't really gotten the opportunities to do it. But I think getting a guy in that can play outside. We've seen Cole Wilson play outside at Texas State a lot. And then, of course, Kobe Prentice. Now you have more options for guys at that outside receiver position. Throw in Jaden Porter as well. But it's mainly for me, I think it gives them a safe floor. It gives them more cohesiveness in the offense. And it gives you a guy that, frankly, in some of their biggest moments, he really came through. And I know the LSU game, his touchdown, his second touchdown didn't count. But he really looked good in that game and really showed out and really played well. And I think he's a guy that they feel very comfortable with, are going to be able to rely on. And I think his, again, consistency and that relationship he has with Stewart Robertson on the football field is going to help take this offense to maybe even another level.
Yeah, and Grayson, I don't think it's any secret that wide receiver for a couple years was the hardest position to fill up with talent for Baylor. They just were kind of whiffing on it for a little bit. So to have a veteran back in the fold, a couple of transfers that you like, and allow some of the young guys to find their role a little bit easier, as opposed to a couple years ago where it's like, all right, well, next guy's up, and none of them were ready.
Right. And I mean, Paul, you look at the class breakdown. I mean, they don't have a single junior who's a scholarship guy on the depth chart, and they have one sophomore. They have 4 seniors, and then they have 5 freshmen or redshirt freshmen. I mean, there's just a huge gap in there, which kind of makes me think there might be a chance that they still take a transfer wide receiver that maybe has, 2 years or 3 years left, just because there's just this huge gap between all these freshmen and then all these seniors, and there's not much in between. I just think there's still some holes there when it comes to building out, the future of the roster. But I think they've done a really nice job. And I mean, the 2025 recruiting class is really good. And I think you're going to see the 2026 recruiting class at the wide receiver position be potentially the best Baylor has had in a really long time. I mean, they're in a great position with some really, really good players at the wide receiver position at the moment.
Grayson, we're going to do a bit of a dive on the schedule here in a little bit, but I know it came out last week. Did you guys have Grayson on last week?
No.
Okay, so you didn't talk about it much. Not like a full breakdown am I asking for here, but just what were your kind of initial thoughts? Because it's one thing to have a team coming back and on paper you go, oh, well, this team should win 7, 8, 9 games. It's another thing when you actually see what path they have to travel, even though there's a lot of question marks there. So what jumped off the page to you, if anything, about the 2025 schedule release?
I mean, the good news is we kind of already knew what the first 2 games were going to look like for Baylor. The first 3 games, really, because also Stanford in there. So, Baylor's got some big tests. And honestly, I mean, you look through some of the biggest games in the Big 12, Baylor probably has 2 of the top 5 non-conference games in the conference this year. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Baylor to perform, and the Big 12 really needs them to perform. And going up against an Auburn team and an Auburn program that I think is craving getting back to winning. They spent some money as well to do that. Went out, got Jackson Arnold. They're trying to get better, and that's a program that's really been pretty mediocre since 2019. But it's still an SEC program. It's a chance for Baylor to make a statement, and then of course at SMU, a team that was just in the college football playoff a year ago. So we kind of knew what was going on there. But then you look at kind of the meat of the conference schedule, which was released, and I think your first Big 12 game going up against the team that won the Big 12 is really interesting. So Baylor's first, 3 of their first 4 games are going to be really tough challenges. Of course, they got to go to TCU this year, which we already knew was going to happen. But I think the biggest thing that kind of stands out to me when you look at it is you look at the first half of their schedule, and it is an absolute gauntlet. I mean, you got some really, really tough games and some really tough challenges, and we're going to find out pretty quickly, whether Baylor is a Big 12 title contender, a college football playoff contender, or, maybe even a top 10 type team in the country. I mean, if they get through that unscathed, I think there's a real case to be made there. But then you go to the back half of the schedule, their final 5 games, and I just think it sets up really well for them to finish the season strong. I mean, you're talking about 5 teams that really struggled a year ago. When you look at Cincinnati, UCF, Utah, Arizona, and Houston, you get 3 of those games at home. I mean, that was really the bottom half of the conference last year by and large. And so you look at kind of how the preseason polls will probably be projected. A lot of these teams, probably 4 of these 5 teams will probably be picked outside the top 10 teams in the Big 12. So again, Baylor's got a great chance to finish strong. Obviously, as we saw last year, schedules can be a little deceiving because we thought the second half of the schedule last year was going to be really tough and the beginning would be much easier. That's not really how it ended up playing out. But as far as going into this season, that's kind of my expectation. And Baylor's got really tough first 7 games and then a very nice opportunity to finish strong with their last 5 games.
So you mentioned the possibility of the wide receiver and yet another one in the portal. I don't think you could have enough of them, and you can't have enough of anything. But if you said by the time spring drills wrap up and we get into the late spring, what positions must they fill that have not already been filled by what they've been able to do since the season ended?
Right. So going into the summer after spring ball, I think they're going to have a really good idea of kind of what they did through the transfer portal in the spring. And so I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? Because you're going to have to figure out, is the edge position addressed enough with Amarian Winston, bringing in Kamarian Morgan, with bringing in Matthew Fobbs-White? Like, are you good enough there? Because if you're not, then I think that's a position that needs to be addressed. As of right now, I would say it's a position that needs to be addressed just because we don't really know what they're going to get from those guys. And that's why evaluations are so important going on into spring ball. Other positions I'm looking at, right tackle. Baylor elected to not go get a right tackle in the transfer portal, which likely means they're going to ride with Caden Siraki, who played a lot last year and has played a lot so far in his early career at Baylor. I think they're going to give him a shot. And we know they returned 4 of the 5 guys. That position is the lone position where they lost Campbell Barrington. If Caden Siraki shows up and plays really well, then maybe they don't have to look at that position. But that's one that I'm looking at. I mentioned wide receiver. Maybe that's kind of a possible type thing if they would just want to kind of increase their numbers. Some of the other positions, I still think safety is an area that I would look at. Just bringing in another guy there could potentially help, whether it's a star or boundary. I just think bringing in another guy, maybe even field safety if they find the right guy, would make a lot of sense. I could see them taking another defensive lineman, even though I think if guys live up to their potential, it's not necessarily a necessity, but definitely an area they could be looking at. So those are the main ones. But again, I think this all comes down to evaluation, right? How do these guys improve in the spring? What do you see from them? How good are they? And then you kind of go from there with the scholarships you have remaining and kind of divvy those out of positions that you feel like they're the weakest at.
Grayson, basketball, Scott Drew and company lose to Houston back on Monday. I don't think that came really as a surprise, but it's been very up and down, this roller coaster ride of the 2025 season for them. West Virginia coming up tomorrow at home and hosting Arizona. Big Monday, pretty big couple games here, but how do you feel as we start to get into this final stretch of college basketball's regular season?
I feel very uneasy right now. I just think this team has some clear, glaring weaknesses, especially once they lost Josh O. I mean, they were already so thin at the center and really forward position in general. And then you looked at how they played against Houston and how they played against UCF without him, and they just went ultra small. I mean, it's not like they brought in another center off their bench, kind of out of nowhere. They just rolled with the guys that have been playing and, of course, got Langston Love back, which gives them a jolt defensively and offensively. But he's not going to replace Josh O from a rim protection, rebounding, and size standpoint. So this team's really going to have to outscore people. That's kind of how I feel about it at this point. I think they're going to have games where they hemorrhage points and where they just give up a ton of rebounds. I think they'll also have games where they're just really tough to stop and they take advantage of some of the mismatches that they're going to have out there with their 4-guard lineup. I think if you look at their schedule, it's manageable. I mean, West Virginia, Colorado, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, TCU, those are all super winnable games. And honestly, Baylor should win all of those games. If you win all of those games, then you lose the 2 tough ones to Arizona and Houston. That's fine. You're probably going to be a 8 type seed probably, is what I would guess going into the NCAA tournament, unless they go on a run in the Big 12 tournament. But if they do win those games, then they pull off one of these upsets against Arizona or Houston. Now all of a sudden, I think you're really kind of giving yourself a chance to potentially move up a couple lines. I mean, winning a game against Arizona or Houston does a lot for you. And that could lead Baylor to being, somewhere around that 7-6 seed line. Now, again, that means that you're taking full advantage of the opportunities in front of you. You're not getting upset by anyone. And then you're pulling off one of those upsets against Arizona and Houston. That's a lot to ask. And I wouldn't fully expect that at this point. But I do expect Baylor to compete. I think probably the best case scenario in my eyes right now is that Baylor kind of finishes this run 5-2. Going into Big 12 play, get Big 12 tournament play, which again, that gets you squarely in the tournament, gives you a nice chance to potentially make some noise in the Big 12 play.
Yeah, you get to they're 6-3. No. What are they in the conference right now? If they 7-6. If they can get to 10-8 or better, man, or what would it be, 11-9 or something like that. You get above 500 in the Big 12, you're fine. Plus, their strength of schedule is also really, really among the best in the country, too. Anything else, guys, for Grayson?
Nope.
Craig? All right. Grayson, happy Valentine's Day. Thanks for being a part of it, man. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Grayson Grunhafer, Sikkim, 365 recruiting analyst, and also covering the men's basketball and also the football teams, too. Does a Tuesday podcast with Craig called The Bearcast. When we come back, we've discussed a couple of the stories out there. It was like today was the day when a lot of the national college football analysts had a story. From Dennis Dodd to Ross Dellinger to Brandon Marcello to many others. Max, of course, yesterday with a story. But we'll get back to that OTA story and get into that and get your feedback on it as well. What are your thoughts in the chat room about college football's spring schedule changing a little bit because of spring drills, the transfer portal, whatever, and that maybe go to a once or twice OTA type setup early in the summer or maybe in the middle of the summer to help coaches know that when they're going through those workouts, that's who's going to be on their team when they get to August to start the preseason workout into the season. It is 365 Sports. We're back in one moment.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for great customer service, great deals, and great community feel as they've been in Waco for over 2 decades. Right now it's time to love your truck and SUV again as we are here celebrating Valentine's Day, and they've got the Richard Carr Love Your Truck Savings event going on right now to celebrate with great savings during Valentine's Day, which means all 2024 cars and trucks are priced to move, like saving $9,000 on all 2024 Sierra SLT and SLE models in stock. Non-GM owners that are qualified can also save $4,500 on a new 2025 Buick Encore GX or $3,000 on a Buick Enclave. So just in one fell swoop there, in a couple of sentences, I mentioned about $15,000 in savings and just some of the offers, just a scraping of the offers they have going on right now over at Richard Carr. So go check those deals out and celebrate, maybe drive away here on Valentine's Day weekend with a car that you will love. They are locally owned, locally run, and they've been a part of the community for over 40 years, doing business in Waco with a dealership do business, I should say, in Waco with a dealership that gives back to Baylor and the Waco community. Deal with the people you can count on at Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the
Profit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
365 Sports, we will have the Baylor schedule. We're going alphabetical. We started with Arizona and then Arizona State. We will have Baylor today, and then, of course, we get into everybody else. 16 consecutive days of looking at the schedules and kind of breaking them down, looking at the sections of them and how they fall out for everybody. College coaches mull NFL-style OTAs off. OTAs, which is what the NFL has done for a long time. Now, they've changed the name of some of these voluntary, et cetera, as a replacement for spring games amid roster tampering injury concerns. We just had Sam talk about it quite a bit. I love this idea. I think that it is not even some that might prevent any more tampering, because tampering is going to happen. But to me, it allows you to know more of who's going to be with you when you start the season for real, when you start the workouts in August.
Yeah, I think that this just makes more sense. I'm all for, I'm all for it. Spring football is not what it used to be. And truth be told, it hasn't really been that way for 25 years. I said overall, usually they would play a full game, but as far as I can remember, they've started doing these kind of modified games and things like that. So practices. So that started a long time ago. Now, look, in the last 5 years, it's really taken a dive.
Yeah, I think it's the last 5 years.
But
really,
I do think if you go back, I just think back to when I was in college, and Bobby Bowden was even we're not going to play a full game. We're going to do it. So it wasn't even. It was kind of stupid to watch then. I remember thinking it just. So it's been a slow burn until now. It's kind of caught fire.
I don't know, man. I feel like spring games were pretty much a big deal up until the last 2, 3, 4 years. I think they still had their place. I think the portal's absolutely ruined it, though. I think NIL's ruined it. I think what is the point of going through spring drills with a team, and then you play your spring game, and then the next day or whatever, guys are leaving that you just spent 2 months with, getting them ready for your team specifically and this next season, and then they're just gone. So that was wasted time is what that was. That was a complete waste of time for you, and maybe not for the player, because the player still developed to some extent, but it was a complete waste of time. So, yeah, why do you want to go coach up a roster that you can't even guarantee is the roster you're coaching in the fall? What's the point of that? So I understand where the complaints come from, and I just think – part of the reason, guys, why the spring game's not as big of a deal, because they don't have all this extra money that they're spending on that, because they want to make it a jamboree or this big recruiting weekend or this big red-white affair or whatever. They're like, no, we're not going to go all out for this spring game. We're going to spend that on our NIL money, or we don't have to go that big because now we have the portal. So we don't have to go all in on this high school kid the way that we used to. So I just think the dynamics of what you're focusing on have shifted to the point where, it's lessened the importance of the spring game. Not that it was ever, from a game standpoint, a big deal. It was just an exhibition, and some teams did full games. Some teams did near flag football, depending on injuries or whatever. But, I'm just leery in terms of this topic of doing everything like the NFL. I don't want it to be the NFL. I do think the NFL does things, though, that make sense, that would make the game a bit better or more streamlined, maybe like the spring game switcheroo and making it more of an OTAs. I'm fine with that. I just don't think you need to look to the NFL to solve every one of your problems on how to change things so that you do unintentionally become the lightweight NFL, which you're looking to avoid, right? So, I think you've got to be mindful of that. But in this instance, I do think it makes sense. I think there's still a place for spring ball, but the big, grand, glorious spring game, probably not necessary, because your money's better spent elsewhere for starters, and your roster is, constantly in flux. I think the Matt Rule thing is a little bit overblown on his end. I don't know that like it's quite to the extent. And I think most plenty of people have come out and said like we agree with him to an extent. It's maybe not like as much of exactly what he said, but he has a point. And so I think this is addressing that and. It's a worthy change, I feel like, as long as there's some still spring football activity. I don't think the game being around is going to change the fandom for anybody one way or the other.
I don't either. And a lot of times, if you've had a coaching change at a school that's got a lot of passion and a lot of commitment, the first spring game under ex-coach or whatever, it always has an uptick when it comes to the attendance. For some places, it's just always that way. A lot of it might be the excitement of what you have coming up, too. From the chat room, I still like my spring game, the idea of cutting the season to 11 games and playing an FCS team as your spring game. That I've brought this up as playing somebody in football, another college team, is a spring game. I have brought that up, or a scrimmage. It doesn't have to be a full-blown game. But I've brought that up to Art Browse, and he kind of looked at me, high school coach that he was for the longest time, and said, what? He said he thinks it's a great idea.
I would, especially when you talk about if you're going to play Florida A&M or Prairie View or somebody, to me, that's when you would do it if you're going to do it, but not during the regular season.
Yeah, you're going to have injuries even if it's a practice, much less if it's a spring game, spring drills, glorified scrimmage, whatever it might be.
Did you ever talk to Dave Aranda about it, or Matt Rule, or anybody else?
I'm sorry I used the wrong coach's name.
No, I'm just saying that's a blast from the past.
That was one of my very first questions to him, and it's always one that stuck. No. I've asked Matt Rule that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And I've asked other coaches that, but he was the first one I asked it, because I really didn't. I covered college football, but never covered a specific program. He thought it was a good idea. Chris Kleiman's the one that likes the OTA's idea, but he's not the only one. But I think that playing, if it's Texas Southern or Houston Christian, or even if it's, I don't know who it could be, Texas State, have them play.
Yeah, I meant no offense.
Like the Rams in the Cowboys scrimmage or whoever else does, why can't the colleges do that?
Yeah, I meant no offense. It's just that's you named the coach. He's hadn't coached in 10 years. I mean, we're at the 10-year anniversary.
He was the first coach I ever asked that question.
Yeah,
that's
so there's been multiple coaches since then, and so if they've agreed to that, then there's a few examples of that. But I've heard various coaches over the years that would be in favor of something like that, and you can rattle off how many teams. Prairie View A&M versus A&M. Okay, boom, there's a spring game, or whatever you want to do. You get the picture. I'd be for a scrimmage. I think there is some pageantry and fun that can be had with the spring game. I think there's still an element of that if pulled off correctly in the right place, can be a fun jamboree-style fan experience and get-together. Like, there's still value in the team autographing things for kids, and there's still value in taking pictures and getting that opportunity if you're a young fan, or even an older fan that you like collecting things. Maybe you love that they do the autograph sessions or whatever. So that type of fan activity, you can still do that. You don't just necessarily have to have a 4-quarter spring game. So whether it's Aranda, which I don't know, have you asked Aranda this before?
I asked him maybe the 2021 following that season, when there was so much adrenaline and energy and momentum into 2022 spring. And I remember asking him that, and he was worried about the attrition. Because here's the example. If you're going to do that, Texas Southern does not want to play a spring game against A&M. We don't think. You wouldn't think.
Well, if anybody's worried about injuries, it would be Texas Southern.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and not so much A&M. But I just think if the NFL guys could do it, and they could do it in a controlled fashion, or preseason games, although they're cutting those back, I don't know why A&M can't scrimmage Stephen F. Austin or someone like that.
Yeah, well, the other reason why I ask if you've talked to Aranda or Rule about it, and obviously Rule said that he'd like to do that, right? I believe.
Yes.
Rule said he'd be in favor of that. So, Nebraska could play Temple, and they could have their
which those two would have a great time. Yeah.
But it's just with the example you gave, it's a lot different college football than when that guy was last around. I mean, think about what has happened in the last 10 years, which is now 11 in college football. It is nothing like it was in 10 years, 2015 to 2025.
Yeah, spring drills used to, man, it was a big deal.
So that's a little bit of a different opinion all these years later because so much has changed.
I think you're overthinking what I said, though.
No, I'm just saying, that's why I added on Rule and adding that other coaches have said this because they've more updated and they have experienced what college football is actually like right now, which is what we're talking about. And so, yeah, I think that there's multiple people that have expressed their willingness to do that just here. So there's 3 coaches. And so, yeah, I'd imagine it's the same a lot of other places. But, yeah, it's a much different game is all I'm saying than it was 10 years ago.
All right, we have the Baylor schedule today. Graphic that Garrett will put up when we come back in the next segment. Also today, an interesting story. A coach who's now at Sul Ross State who's been an offensive coach at many places, including West Texas A&M, Houston, Baylor, Texas Tech, and more. We'll have that interview at 4:45 or so. Stewart Mandel, theathletic.com, in the 5 o'clock hour. And Bob Thompson, it's been a while, his thoughts about some of these, like, for example, YouTube TV is in discussions with Paramount Plus and CBS and all the other things about are they going to get a deal done. It happens. I saw where Formula One's being dropped by ESPN. We'll get into that's a very highly rated sport. We'll get into some of that TV stuff with Bob Thompson in the 5 o'clock hour. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler, Jeep Ram Fiat. We got a new commercial. Did you get that, Paul, by the way? They sent you the new link. Alan Samuels, legendary Truck Month. Here's the thing about Alan Samuels, and I don't think it is every month, but they could. Alan Samuels, Truck Month, because of Ram trucks. 7 times they've been honored as the Motor Trend Truck of the Year, including the most recent awards. Designed to go anywhere at any speed. This is the Ram RHO, in stock right now on the dealership. You don't always get that, but they have the trucks ready for you. And on top of that, you want to test drive it, their client manager who you talk to will make sure you get a chance to do that. 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cabs, $14 grand off MSRP. Also, the unbeatable value, the Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab, starting at $35,995, or you could upgrade that a couple of $1,000s at $37,995. Get it upgraded. Come by or go by their Loop 340 east of 84 with David Gray, the general sales manager. They got a great staff, everyone friendly. I go by, there's a couple of guys that like to talk more about high school football. Some want to talk about the Big 12 or whatever programs from Baylor to Georgia. And good people, sports fans in there too, but they also know their cars, trucks, and vans at Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Loop 340, and east of 84 in Waco.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
This is the third of the 16 teams in the Big 12 that we will show you their schedule. We have broken down Arizona and Arizona State, the defending Big 12 champion Sun Devils, and now Baylor with what is a great schedule, especially early, and then we don't know what's going to happen in the Big 12, who's going to be what, but I freaking love this. Auburn at SMU and Samford to start it out. We'll go with that triplet right there, the trifecta. I love this schedule. I don't know how they'll do in it. I'm going to say come out of it 2-1, but I think they want more than that, but that's a great schedule.
Well, look, they have one game on this schedule that if you were a Baylor fan, you would just kind of phone in, and that would be Samford. And no offense to Samford, but, they're an FCS program. So 11 of the 12 games are absolute bangers compared to every other schedule they've ever had. And when you start out with Auburn and SMU, man, that is amazing top two games. More than likely, if this schedule just stays partly as good as we think it could be, if the teams all kind of stay who they are on paper, this is one of the toughest in the country and should be very entertaining all year long. But Auburn, SMU to open up. In Auburn, especially early on, Hugh Freeze starts the year under the gun of you got to get something done, and Jackson Arnold, likely, unless he doesn't win the job, but I don't see that happening, his first start for Auburn will come here in Waco.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good non-conference schedule. Jackson Arnold is going to make Auburn better, you would think, than what we saw them trotting out there last year, although he needs to be a lot better than what we saw him trotting out there last year as well. So I think those two will help each other in a good way compared to their 2024 campaigns. But to what extent, especially in the first game of the year, I have no idea. Like we said when we started this is not like a record prediction and like full-on season preview. So just looking at the schedule itself, I mean, that's probably the best non-conference schedule in the Big 12. I don't know everybody's off the top of my head or like the back of my hand, but I can't imagine there's too many other teams that are playing Auburn and SMU level in the same three-game stretch. So to have the Auburn game in Waco to start things off, first game of the year, really tees up nicely to maybe pull an upset since we don't know how good Auburn's going to be, but a nice opportunity in week one to make a huge statement regardless of what Auburn eventually is by the time January rolls around. So, yeah, that's the biggest game that's been at that stadium. And as far as non-conference, I don't know, ever. I'm trying to think of who else has rolled through. I mean, Utah or someone like that, I guess. But
yeah, there's a lot of fun with that one, or BYU a couple 3 years ago, but not like this.
I think Auburn will be like the quote-unquote the sexiest team as far as name and brand and all of that. And then SMU coming off the playoff. I mean, Baylor's pretty much dominated SMU, but the first game at McLean was SMU. And that's a different SMU than the one that we've seen the last couple of years with Rhett Lashley. They're a very formidable team. They're obviously now in the ACC. So, yeah, you got a SEC and ACC opponent back-to-back. Go and play up in Dallas in front of what should be a pretty good crowd. And then Samford, that's your one give-me win. But, yeah, you could very easily be 0-2 to start the season if you're not careful.
All right, then you start the conference play. And, of course, there's not 9 games. They have not only that really good against who they're playing non-conference, and then you get the defending champions in your first Big 12 game.
Yeah, the whoever made this schedule was not afraid
on a computer.
The computer.
Johnny algorithm.
Yeah, no, Dave Aranda and the team are going to have to not be afraid of anything and be ready for it all because, again, and I'll say it every time we do it, outside of the team I'm picking dead last, Oklahoma State, in the Big 12, this first 6 weeks is such a bear, and Samford, it's a bear. It's an absolute bear of a schedule, but Big 12 champs to open up. That's going to be a fantastic quarterback matchup. In the first 6 games, they've got Jackson Arnold, Kevin Jennings, Sam Leavitt, and Avery Johnson before the bye. Like, those are quarterbacks and offenses you're going to have to contend with. I couldn't have put together a tougher schedule than this. I really couldn't have for them.
So they do 6-3-3, which is 6 games straight to start the season, and then 3 games after your first bye, and then your second bye, 3 games to finish it out. So that's a bit different than we've seen the first couple of teams. Those two, Arizona State, did not have, I believe, a 6-game stretch on either one of those schedules, much less to start the season. And so correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think that's what I remember correctly. And that really difficult non-con, as you pointed out, goes into a really difficult at least 2 of those first 3 Big 12 games. We don't know what Oklahoma State's going to be, but, yeah, to get Arizona State right out of the gate, Arizona State, SMU, and Auburn, that's 2 playoff teams and a team from the mighty SEC. So you could be reeling, you could be flying. Really no clue, and obviously we won't make predictions and all that till we actually get closer to the season. But that's a tough task. And then, Oklahoma State, don't know, and K-State, that's all your games up until that first bye, man. That is brutal. At least K-State's at home. But with Oklahoma State such a wild card, that's in Stillwater, so that throws you for a little bit of an extra challenge perhaps. So, yeah, that's got to be as probably tough of the first 6 games as maybe anybody in the country.
I want to go back to the game if you play the game up to Arizona State, 2 of those 4 teams were in the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, how many are going to be doing that, right? Yeah. And you guys brought that up with the Sanford. But, yeah, Stillwater, you never know, even though we don't know who they're going to be. They don't know who they're going to be. Last time Kansas State came to Baylor, didn't they take their heart, soul, manhood, and everything with them, including the furniture? Wasn't that game when they came rolling in like in 22?
Yeah, it's when the whole losing streak started. Yeah. It's when the whole Dave Aranda going on the hot seat. That all began with that ass whooping at McLean Stadium. Yep. Yes, that was a couple years ago.
Yep. All right, so there we are with the first half of the schedule. Auburn, SMU, Sanford, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Those are the 6 games, and then as Craig, it's different because they get the bye. I got the hiccups. They get the bye after that, and then you get another one later on. So you get a little breather down the stretch if you can get to that point. Now let's go to TCU, Cincinnati, UCF.
TCU on the road, never a place that Baylor likes to play, but they finally did break the losing streak last year. And in a classic game, one of the most fun games you're ever going to see between these two. And now you get TCU another year into their system, another, more old Baylor coaches on their staff and all of those things. But Josh Hoover, who played really, really well down the stretch. Craig and I were talking about it yesterday when I was trying to make quarterback tiers. And he threw a lot of interceptions early. He didn't late, and Craig reminded me of that. So that's going to be a tough one. Cincy on the road, they're kind of in the void for me. It's like I want to say they'll be better, but I don't know. Like they're losing a couple things, and I just don't know where they're at. And then UCF is the other wild card in this conference of who knows how good UCF is going to be in year 1 under Scott Frost.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway from this second portion is that their most difficult portion of the entire season on paper is the first 6 games. Is that first stretch, and whatever they do there is going to kind of dictate what we're talking about for the second and third portions of the season, because the schedule on paper lightens up immensely. Now, TCU is never going to be an easy game, but it also doesn't matter how good or bad TCU is. It's still just TCU. It's a rivalry game. It doesn't matter what record they have. That's going to be a tough game. You just know it will be. And Josh Hoover did not throw interceptions in his final 3 games. Now, he had a stretch early on in the first portion of the season where he was throwing at least one pretty much every game. And then he had a portion in the middle part of the season where I think he had 3 straight games that he threw 2 interceptions in each of those games. I mean, it was bad, the turnover problem. But then he didn't throw a single one in the last 3 weeks. Now, he had fumbling issues at times as well. So, he's definitely got to clean that up, but he's still one of the more talented quarterbacks in the entire league if he can eliminate the turnover bug as he did late in the year as far as throwing picks goes. But, that's always going to be a tough game. And then Cincinnati, that one in Cincinnati, the last time they played, it was a bit of a nail-biter. Baylor won late. I don't really sweat that one too much, especially not knowing much about Cincinnati at this stage. And then, but you do know that they'll be potentially playing for their coach's job, in October, late October. And then UCF much like Cincinnati, don't quite know what to expect. So on paper, that seems like a pretty easy in comparison to the first 6 games. That seems like a pretty easy second stint that it starts to lighten up a little bit for you. And now you see those opportunities that are a bit better percentage-wise for you than Auburn, SMU, K-State, so on and so forth. The second half starts to ease up, but you'll still have to go out and earn it. And TCU, you never can just chalk that up as a win by any means. So I think at this point is where it's just a mystery of where are they going to be by the time this second leg starts after that gauntlet to start the season. Like, are they having to win out to make a bowl game? They were not going to be 0-6, but they have to win like 5 of their last 6 to win to go to a bowl game. That's what I'm curious about.
I think this is going to be the year, with maybe an exception, that what we think the Big 12 will be, they will be.
No.
I said it.
You got medicine shot in your body yesterday, so I'm a little worried.
It's all over the place.
I'm a little worried. Yeah,
I've got
worried.
like
yeah,
9 supplements and 2 prescriptions.
I
think so. I think
the schedule is certainly easier in the last 5 than the first 7 for Baylor, but to me that means very little when it comes to this conference. And look, when we get into the next pod, I'll go more into it, but. Yeah, I think the season kind of swings on, how you do against Kansas State and TCU, and where are you 4-3, 3-4? Are you in that spot before you hit at worst, or are you better? I mean, like Baylor could come out gangbusters and be 6-1.
They could be in the top 15 pretty quickly.
Yeah, Grayson brought that up. Yeah, if they were to get off to a 4-5-0 start, which again I don't expect them to, but they could be. You're right. They could get some. And by the way, you need to beat the SEC and the ACC when you have a chance to do that in the non-conference. Okay, so if you would have taken this schedule and put it last year, we would have looked at Arizona State. Okay, there's a win. Oklahoma State. We never thought they were going to be that good, but we weren't. No one had them up too high. What Blanket did.
Well, I mean, I picked him 4th, and I was told I was an idiot.
See what happens?
I got called a fat idiot for that one. That one was.
Oh, is that supposed to be double down?
Yeah, double down. Hey, by the way, you have a weight problem. Yeah, no, I know it every time I put my friggin' pants on. But it's that one was you don't know ball. I was like, oh well, guess what? That person was right because I picked them way too high.
All right. So. Among the guys they have on the schedule this year, the Baylor, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, UCF, Utah, and Arizona and Houston, all of them, what were they last year? Did they make a bowl game?
No.
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 No one. Yeah,
Arizona State, of course, we know what they did, and then Kansas State still was good. TCU, like you said, Craig, it comes down to Hoover taking care of the football. Yeah. All right. What else you want to do with this one?
We got
the third leg of the schedule.
I know. Well,
the third leg, though.
I know that, but I was just throwing. There's certain nuggets, but there's nothing wrong with me bringing up what I just said.
So you asked what's next. The third leg of the schedule.
Utah, Arizona. Utah, Arizona, and Houston.
Yeah, so the third leg of the schedule, Utah, we don't quite know what they're going to be, but that's in Waco, so that's favorable. Arizona, I think they're scraping for a bowl berth based on what we talked about the other day and the uncertainty surrounding them. And then Houston, I mean, they rolled into Waco and won a couple years ago with not a very good team at all. So it's doable for them, and no idea by November 29th what anybody looks like this far out. But that's a feasible schedule. We're on paper right now. I'd say that's 3-0 or 2-1. And I know that's probably not going to be accurate by the time we get there, but I don't think you're sweating Arizona right now. I don't think you're sweating Houston other than that's just a Texas game, so it's going to be more personal. And then Utah, I think you respect them, but I don't think there's this armor on them that there was prior to last football season, whether it be via the program itself or the fan base. I think that those shields got knocked down and splintered throughout Big 12 play last year, but they're a proud program, and they're going to get back on track, and I think they're going to be much better. But still, I feel like Baylor's in a position where they can beat Utah, and they can beat Utah at home. So, I think the final 5 games – on paper, I'd say you're 5-0 down that stretch. It's a matter, though, of what you are, I guess, leading into that. And obviously those final 5 games might, again, look a lot different by the time we get there. So that's how they finish out. And I think you'd be plenty happy with that. So it's definitely a tale on paper of 2 halves of this season. The first 7 and those final 5 look awfully different.
Yeah, but – I will tell you this, like I told you yesterday, Craig, I think Devin Dampier changes Utah quite a bit because that was their kind of issue. And then secondarily, Arizona, again, kind of lives in that Cincinnati area where what are they going to be? But Houston, I would rather play Houston early as they find their footing with Connor Wigman than late under Willie Fritz in year 2. That's a scary game at the end of the year for me, because if Willie Fritz does his Willie Fritz thing, then that's the time that they'll start being like, oh, watch out for these Houston Cougars in 2026. That's when they would make me nervous.
Yeah, I think, anytime you play an in-state team, it's almost like throwing the records out. But, I'm not really too worried about them at this point. And you miss some pretty good teams on the schedule for as tough as the schedule looks, again, on paper. You don't play Texas Tech, which, that's been, 3 straight years of blowouts, 2 for Baylor and 1 for Texas Tech. And the 2 Baylor blowouts were in Lubbock, and the one Tech blowout is in Waco. But that's a game that's usually pretty fiery, but that's not on the schedule. I don't know. I feel like there's no reason why the Texas teams shouldn't round robin each other outside of there's just an impossible algorithm, but I don't believe that. I believe there has to be a way where that's feasible, because it just makes little sense to not do that. So I think not having all the Texas teams play is a mistake. So you don't play Texas Tech. That's a big rivalry. Like, I know nationally people won't blink at that whatsoever, but for the fans of your conference who actually watch your games, that's a big game. That's as heated as you can get, like, in terms of respectability, but also a lot of hatred. Like, it's very much like TCU Baylor or TCU versus Texas Tech or whatever other ones might be missing, but you don't play them. So I think that kind of sucks, because that's a game that fans look forward to. You also don't play Colorado, which may or may not be a big deal. You don't play BYU, which that's probably a big deal because you expect them to be pretty good. You don't play West Virginia. Mm-hmm. You don't play Colorado, I mentioned. You don't play Kansas. And you don't play Iowa State. So I think you feel probably pretty good to avoid BYU, to avoid Iowa State, depending on how much you care about a rivalry, Texas Tech. So you might have caught a little bit of a break there, even though that first half is tough, like we said.
Well, the Texas Tech thing with just the self-emotional part of it with Joey and that staff, and, man, like you said, when they've beaten each other, they've beaten the hell out of each other those last 3 games, one way or the other. When we come back, he's the new head football coach at Sol Ross. He has been a part of big schools in Texas. His story next on 365 Sports. Ideal. How about this one? Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace. I'm going to be there tomorrow at 12:30 for my mid-back, the thoracic part of my spine, to get an MRI because I've had these issues. This is not the hip. All that's been treated. It's been really, really pretty nice and solid, and I've been able to handle that. But then the shoulder blade thing came up, muscle spasms that are sometimes so tight it just hurt. So I was able to get treatment yesterday thanks to Dr. Torr, Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine. But they also ordered an MRI to look. They've seen my neck. They've seen my lower back. Now they want to see my thoracic cavity area. And I'm doing that tomorrow. The MRI was ordered yesterday about 5. and I'm going to be inside the MRI, the imaging machine at Ideal MRI tomorrow at 12:30. State-of-the-art imaging machine. I called today. They called me to have them call back for an appointment. And the lady, she must be new. She goes, have you ever been here before? I go, yeah, look at my chart. I've been inside their machine 3 to 4 or 5 different times. It's a wonderful experience, and I can't wait to get the results. And maybe there's something else that shows up, hopefully not, that they need to treat. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace, $497 or less every single time.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Nicotine Group Insurance Agency. With the Nicotine Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Nicotine Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Nicotine Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Lee Hayes is the head football coach at Sul Ross State, Texas Tech, Houston, Baylor, among many others, and he joins us on 365 Sports. Good to see you, man. How you been?
Good, sir. Good to see you.
You too. Craig Smoak with me. Paul Catalina, thanks for your time. So you've been around. I mean, you have made almost a full circle. Let's discuss, first of all, the opportunity at Sul Ross and how this all kind of came about.
Well, I talked to Amanda Workman, the AD down there, and they're looking for a head coach. And my son finally graduated here in Lubbock, and he's off to college, so it gave me an opportunity to get back in the college game. So there you go.
Lee, I'm sure you don't remember this, but when you got the Baylor offensive coordinator job, your first radio interview was with me and Steve Fallon at 7:20 in the morning.
I think I still had hair.
Maybe, I don't know, but it is like that journey here. You stepped in and helped improve an offense and kind of move it in the direction that it went. What did you learn from your stint here, and what you were kind of on the front wave of everybody kind of installing faster, more spread out offenses?
Yeah, it was actually it was a big step up going from Division II to Power 5 back then. And really, it was just kind of how to build a team and an offense. It's a little bit different Division II wise, the way you can plug guys in. But now with the portal and everything, it's kind of gotten to the point where it's like smaller college where you have all the transfers and stuff. But it was a little bit of a jump, media and stuff like that. I wasn't used to in Division II having to get up at 7:30 for an interview. Wasn't too many people knocking down the door.
What was it like to coach with Guy Morris?
Love Guy. Everything about Guy is that stands out the most is probably, his character. And it was great to get around a guy who put the kids first. Guy really did. And he was all about graduating and taking care of the kids. and that always impressed me about him.
You speaking to that point, because I was here then. Smokey wasn't here yet, but I don't think Guy Morris gets enough credit for because he didn't achieve the goals that he wanted, that you guys were after, but how much he pulled the program up from the bottom and put it on the track that it's been on since he left. There were some innovation and things that were not going on pre-Guy Morris and your staff that they've since started doing, and sometimes I think he gets forgotten in that.
You know, I think he does. He got there when it's a tough time, and it was a little bit, you know, with everything that was going on, not just in football.
Yep.
And I think that what he brought was stability and character. And, you know, with Guy, it was one way or the highway. And he always was about doing right and taking care of the school and the brand and making sure that nobody stepped out of line, that's for sure.
Lee, you're in obviously an area that it's kind of remote at Sul Ross. What is the challenge of getting people there, and once they're there, the selling point?
Well, you're right about that. That's cowboy country. You know, I think it's 2 hours to a big airport, which for us is, you know, a commercial airport. But, you know, I think Sul Ross offers opportunity, not only for players, but coaches too, you know, young coaches, and got to get the right fit in there. And the biggest thing is that it's a great place to get a degree, you know, and we're selling degrees and an opportunity to prove yourself. A lot of those kids have a chip on their shoulder. You know, they got to be blue collar kids that feel like they were overlooked in recruiting. And if you think you were overlooked, come to Sul Ross, baby. We'll find out.
Lee Hayes, the head coach at Sul Ross State, with us on 365 Sports.
So, Lee, a lot of people may not know this about you, but you were in the Marine Corps. You served our great country. You were a sniper in the Marine Corps. That journey from there to coaching, where did you decide once you left the military that coaching was going to be?
Really, my wife decided. I had a re-enlistment and an opportunity to get a duty station that I really wanted, but it was kind of remote. Mm-hmm. And her and her family decided to do a sit down and figure out what else I could do. And then, you know, I decided it was going to be a college coach. And the funny part about that is, you know, I'd played in the LSC, and every stop I'd been on, the graduate assistants had all played at that school. So I had 1 year of eligibility left at 30 years old. And I talked to Coach Harms about walking on down there with the intent that as soon as the season was over, asking for a GA spot so I could get started in coaching. And about the third week of the season, I think we were flying to North Dakota State. And Chris Ballard, who is the GM for the Colts, was the DB coach, and he was right next to me, and he was like, "What is a 30-year-old doing playing Division II football?" Man, I'm trying to get into coaching, brother. I'm going to put that work in. He goes, "You don't have to play." I said, "What?" I said, "No, man, you don't got to play. We can take you as a GA right now." I thought, man, that would be my last game, boys. And then the boss asked me if I could stick it out through the season because they needed a backup tight end. So I had to keep rolling to the end of the season.
Well, you know, you have players now who are playing till they're about 30 because of the new rules with the extra years. The guy from Miami was a 9-year player, the tight end, by the way. Yeah.
He's trying to beat my record.
How does what we see now with the highest levels of college football in any way, shape, or form affect Sul Ross football?
You know, I guess the portal is the thing that jumps out at everybody with the way that you can transfer in and out and up and down. You know, it used to be that if you transferred from Division II or Division III or 1AA even, you had to sit out a year, and that's all changed on us.
Do you West Texas has been hard to recruit to, but there is talent out there. There's a lot of good football out there. Do you see that as more of is it a challenge, or is it something that maybe just isn't painted in the right light?
Well, everywhere you go, you're going to say it's a challenge. When we were at Texas Tech, it was proximity to the big schools, and they had to drive through Baylor to get to Texas Tech. And it's the same deal. I've just got to find the right fit and get out there. I know there's 22 men out there that want to come play at Sul Ross University and help us win a championship, and I've got to turn over a few rocks and get on the road and make it happen.
I want to go back to what you did in the U.S. Marine Corps as a sniper. First of all, that's amazing. Can you try to describe the discipline to be, to be in the Marine Corps, but the discipline to be a sniper?
First off, I get a lot of questions about that sniper position and all that. And what I want to say is I don't consider myself a sniper. I'm a school trained. I went to the Marine Corps sniper course, and it took a lot of discipline, but I feel like one of those, theft of valor or something like that when I try to step in. There's so many guys out there that have done so much more than me, and I feel like I'm kind of taking a bit of their spotlight. But, it was one of those deals where you grow up, and I volunteered and got the opportunity to go, and I just kind of tried to be the gray man, stayed in line, and didn't open my mouth, which is really hard for me.
Lee Hayes with us, Sul Ross State University. How much of being in the Marine Corps, how about this? How much does that translate in how you become a coach?
For me, it's absolutely everything, from the leadership style, the fundamentals of leadership, and how we handle our business as a team. I'm old school, always will be. When if anybody coming to Sul Ross needs to understand, when it's White Sox Day, we're putting White Sox on. If it's Black Sox Day, that's what's going on, or you're not practicing.
So how much has your offense changed from your days at Baylor?
Well, drastically. I've kind of swung the opposite. Okay. Now that everybody's running that spread, it's not quite as advanced. I don't have the advantage that I used to have, so we changed it up a lot, really.
Yeah, you could be a trailblazer and go all the way back to the bone.
That's where I'm headed, baby.
There's something to be said about that. The academies use it, and a few others run something similar to it. Not many people see it. So when you run it, it takes teams a week, like prep for 1 week may not be enough.
Yes, sir. I don't kind of fall in line when you don't have the same cats as the bigger schools or whatever does. You have to do something different. So we're not going to try to get up there and play smash mouth. We're gonna work a little option and go back to old school.
Now, the year that I guess it was the first year when you were hired at Baylor, you put up good numbers. Sean Bell was, I think, the quarterback. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Got lucky, lucky with the coach's kid. And Sean, he grasps the offense real quick.
So that was one. And Baylor had been through, and this, you mentioned this, they'd been through a terrible drought of winning in football, and they had the issues going on elsewhere, but they had just not won. You gave them, some of the fans on the message board, when I said we're going to have you on today, were saying that we felt like we had turned the corner with that team, the fan base, because it had been my God, it was like a desert. And you guys, that team kind of gave everybody a nice jolt. Did you feel that too?
I did, but also felt like that a couple of plays here or there, and Guy would have got another contract.
Yep.
It's one of those deals where, a fumble here, a fumble there, and a bad call by a young OC can make or break a season.
So what was it like now to see Texas Tech where they are, where you've been, Houston with Willie Fritz there, and now with Baylor and Dave Aranda? They had a nice run for the last decade and a half with a couple of down notes too, to see some of the teams where you were and what they're doing.
It's amazing. I'm so happy for U of H getting in the Big 12 and watching all the new things. that are happening at Baylor and Texas Tech. I mean, they're second to none right now when you talk about facilities and funding and fan base. Really, it's so impressive to watch them grow. I drove by the Texas Tech stadium the other day and didn't even recognize it. And then, heck, my son went on a visit down at Baylor for one of their camps. I didn't even know how to get around anymore. I couldn't believe all the new stuff and how nice it is and what an unbelievable job Coach has done out there too.
When I moved here in 2010, and I'd been to watch baseball, I'd been to the Farrell Center to do a couple of basketball games, JUCO games. I'd been to Floyd Casey, but you're right. When I drove down University Parks in 2010 and saw all of what they've done, and now you're right, it's 10 times even more, and it's just all state of the art. They've done an amazing job up and down what they're doing with the Brazos River too.
And the school. I mean, the school itself is unbelievable.
All right, Lee, what are your expectations? How quickly you get into this? What's your schedule and trying to jump into it? A team that didn't win a lot last year, and it's now it's your clock.
You know, I'm one of those that I feel like any game I play, we can win, and I'm going to compete. I'm not going down there to roll over or make excuses. They've got everything in place. They've got a football field. They've got a weight room, and we've got an equipment budget. So that's all I need.
Did I get this right that you were at Tarleton at one point?
Yes, sir.
So how about what they've done? They're now at the high level.
Man, one of these days I'm going to find one of those high level spots and get in there after everything's already built up.
Yeah, what Todd Whitten's done there and that administration. Hey, Lee, I got to ask you this question. Now, there's a little beeping noise that sometimes is going on in the background. Is that an old Pong game, the old video game that you and I probably played back when they weren't real fancy?
You know, there's no telling how long or what's going on, but my poor hearing, I can't hear anything.
I'm just having fun with you.
It's all those years on the headset, Coach.
It's exactly right. You get that like musician's ear, or for me at my age, and a sportscaster's headset ear. A lot of people, when I said we were going to have you on, we're looking forward to seeing you and talking to you or hearing from you. We appreciate it, Lee. Good luck. Have a great time and enjoy the ride.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Lee Hayes, the head football coach at Sul Ross State University in Alpine. And again, he's been at some schools now. And like he said, it's time for him to find one of those and then watch them as he's there grow into what they possibly can be. Bob Thompson, just around the corner, former Fox Sports executive and president. Also, we'll have Stewart Mandel on his tiers of college football teams and Paul's Top 5. This is 365 Sports.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Bud Light. Enjoy the smooth, crisp taste of Bud Light beer. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Man, we love Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports president, has his own business too. But I saw this. This is after Bob contacted me with all this YouTube TV. Their prices have increased. And then the thought about March Madness, the Masters, et cetera, with Paramount Plus and CBS. This was from earlier today. On them having to possibly not have CBS and Paramount as they were going through negotiations. And then, and by the way, the reaction from people, and I'm a YouTube TV guy, I was pissed. An update for our members. We've reached a short-term extension with Paramount to keep their content on YouTube TV. Subscribers continue to have access to Paramount channels, including CBS. We appreciate your patience as we continue to negotiate on your behalf. Bob Thompson saw my response to that. I was like, listen, man, the prices are going up, and I was one of the nice ones, I think. Bob, thanks for your time. You get a kick out of they were getting peppered last night, weren't they?
Yeah, they're getting slammed pretty good.
So what does this mean? That did they realize they're getting peppered and they reached like a 1 or 2 month? How does this work to keep the content?
Well, I hate to burst any bubbles, but the rumor is it was for 1 day. So you may go dark at midnight Eastern.
What? Wow. That's gonna make whoever was angry like furious now if that's the case. Yeah.
Well, I mean that's the word, and you know what? All these entities, whether it be the distributor or the programmer, they and the attorneys associated, all work better under deadlines. So having that deadline there, you know, and they may extend it another day or another week or a month, but at least it continues the dialogue and the discussions. So I think from that standpoint, the fact that it did not go dark yesterday, you know, bodes well for hopefully reaching an agreement sooner rather than later.
Bob, you know, it's strange that this was all. I was talking to Andrew Zimmern last week at the Super Bowl, and he brought this up. He said, you know, everything we did was to go away from bundling and to do kind of, you know, whatever you wanted. Now it's all back to bundling again. But now you have would you say it's a more complex landscape when you have everybody with their own app and trying to like fill that through a Hulu, a YouTube TV, whatever?
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult way for everybody to access content. We're kind of halfway. We're half pregnant here. We're using a lot of streaming. We're using a lot of linear. We're using bundle. We're using, you know, direct to consumer a la carte type offerings. And so there's just a lot of different ways to access it. You know, I think that it's slowly but surely getting easier. I think you're going to see some continued rationalization of some of these streaming services. There's going to be some mergers. There's going to be some partnerships. They can't all continue to operate at the losses that they are. So I think you're going to continue to see some skinnier bundles, and that may be what this is about. You know, CBS/Paramount has 21 different channels, and I don't know that YouTube TV necessarily wants to carry 4 different iterations of MTV. Mm-hmm. And so part of that, and this, you know, was some of the things that Fubo went after, you know, the Venue Sports JV. They wanted to be able to offer skinnier bundles as well. And ultimately they got that as part of the settlement of the lawsuit. So that could be the same type of situation that YouTube TV is looking for, the ability to maybe not necessarily take all of the channels, or the ability to package them in different ways, and in essence, unbundle the bundle as it relates to CBS. An interesting thing, though, is that, and I don't know, Smokey, if you saw this, but someone sent me a copy of a letter that they got from YouTube TV, where it specifically said that they would rebate $7.99, which, lo and behold, is the price of Paramount Plus. Now, if you have Paramount Plus, that's a pretty good workaround, at least from the sports standpoint, because they tend to put all the CBS network sports onto Paramount Plus. So you would not actually lose the content. And it's important because we do, you know, other than the NFL season and the college football season, this is their sweet spot with March Madness coming up, the Masters. They've just started, you know, into the golf. So I think that's a good alternative if this thing does ultimately fall apart and the channels are yanked.
Bob, I know it's a very short sample size and there's a lot of moving parts, but looking back a year later on the Pac-12 and the Apple deal, we've seen the CW go hard into sports, and they seem to be enjoying that and having, some success, it seems like. We've seen Apple TV with MLS and things like that. Benefit of hindsight, does that deal look better, worse, or about the same it did back a year ago when it was such a big debate about what the future held?
I think that it's about the same. The closest thing you can relate to what the Pac-12 was offered is the MLS deal. And that deal, a couple of things. Number one, it's not doing that well. Otherwise, they would have announced some numbers, and they have never announced any type of numbers. Number two is they've pivoted this year to also offering the content via some cable operators and DirecTV. So you can buy a package of MLS games directly from a different distributor other than Apple TV Plus. Apple TV Plus doesn't have a huge subscriber base. It's without a doubt the smallest of all the streamers. So I would say, that it was probably too early for the MLS to go all in on streaming, as I would say it was too early for the Pac-12 to go all in on streaming. Will it be there at some point? Absolutely. But I just don't think it's there yet.
So you mentioned the $7.99 credit. You think when they put that out there, they thought that was going to soothe everybody's feelings? Because haven't they raised their prices from what was $39 to now? Because I have it to what now is like $85 or something like that.
Yes. I mean, they did the typical, early introductory special offer price. And I think it was around $35 when they first went on the air or first went on the internet. It quickly rose to 60. And then last year it went up to 70 something. And I believe the new increase is to like 80 to 99 or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, they're right up there. And you knew they had to get that price up because, look, they're paying the same rates that, the other guys are paying. You can't continue to just, subsidize the programmers at the expense of your P&L. Now for Google, I hate to tell you, but YouTube TV is a rounding error in the size of that company. So it's not going to be financially detrimental if they don't get to the same rate level that the other distributors do. But I think, whoever's running that business for YouTube or for Google's probably got the pressure on them to be profitable as well. So you're seeing the rates go up like they are.
Here's a couple of responses on Twitter from Greg Fury. How about you get rid of all the channels that you have picked up through the years and go back to $35 a month? Quit acting like a cable company and allow a la carte channels. And then this one here from Maxwell Clark. It's supposed to be easy for us when we're paying you money. We will always go to what works best for the customer. Time to look at new options.
Well, that's an interesting response to that last one, because the one thing that the streaming bundlers offer versus dealing with your typical cable company, such as a Comcast or a Spectrum or whoever, is it's a lot easier to break up. With your cable guy, it would be impossible. You'd be on phone forever, and it takes, got to take the boxes in. You can drop YouTube TV and be on Fubo or Hulu Plus Live TV or Sling or DirecTV Stream in like 10 minutes. I mean, it's that easy to change. So you can go to somewhere else who has the content. But look, every place you go, there's issues. I mean, Fubo doesn't carry TNT. So when you get to March Madness, you wouldn't have the TNT channels. So, there's always give and take. You're going to gain some things, you're going to lose some things, but it is easier to move on and explore other options, as that post on X said. I think, will people do it? I don't know. I would expect that if this happens, there's going to be some special offers out there from other streaming services to try and entice subscribers to switch over to their platform.
Bob, Fubo blew up the venue thing, but it seems to me now, and this is just an outsider, that that was just so that they could get involved with the big boys, because now they're with Hulu Disney, right? Can you explain how the venue died, and now that Hulu can get Fubo, that they don't need anybody else in this whole thing?
Right. Well, yeah, it's I mean, the best I can make of it is, the folks at Disney corporate decided it was easier to buy them than to fight them. And so they did. And I think that, being involved in long-term litigation is very expensive. And, nobody knew if it was going to actually even work. So this allows them to, take Fubo, combine it, with the buying power of Hulu plus live TV, so that they're a big boy in terms of purchasing content from other programmers. And it also allows them to, kind of play with it and offer smaller bundles and skinnier bundles, which, ultimately they're going to have to offer to other distributors as well, because if, Disney does it on their platform, they're going to have to offer it to others, because everybody's got an MFN out there. So I think it was an interesting move, a little bit surprising to me. I thought they would fight it a little harder. It kind of, set Fox adrift, and Fox has now kind of announced that they're going to go forward with some sort of a package, direct-to-consumer package. And, TNT, or the Warner Brothers Discovery, already has one with Max. So I think everybody's going to be covered. But they just won't be covered. They won't be in that little skinny bundle together.
Bob, what did you think of the first year that they had the 12-team playoff, and how ESPN ran it, the playoff itself, and how it all played out?
I thought it went very well. I think you got to look at the seeding, the reseeding. Yeah, I don't think just because you're a top 4 conference, you should automatically get a top 4 seed. So I think that's, I can say that after my Ducks got steamrolled by Ohio State. So I would have much rather played someone else in the first or in the second round. But I think they got to do that. I'm not over. I don't know that you have to go to 16. I think I don't have an issue with buys. I just have an issue with the reseeding. I think the ESPN. The games were great, well produced. I thought all that was fine. They've got to do something about the scheduling. You can't be going up against the NFL on those dates, that the first day. Because the NFL is going to flex their muscles, and as we saw with them scheduling, Kansas City and Pittsburgh and Baltimore, some really good teams.
Absolutely.
There's a way to work around it. Whether you start the season a week earlier or what, but there's play different days of the week, but there's no reason to have games going up against the NFL. But other than that, I thought it was, a surprisingly great effort by everybody involved. It came off, logistically just fine. I think there was, I didn't see any denigration of the regular season ratings or anything related to, the champ games are irrelevant anymore, anything like that. So I think actually, if you combine the realignment moves and some of the new matchups that were brought to TV for the first time, combined with people being in it and involved longer, given that there's 12 teams as opposed to 4, I think it led to a real high interest level for college football all season long.
So, Bob, after the Super Bowl every year, we all bemoan the fact that we have to go to work the next day. And that's kind of been the conversation with the national championship games. Like, why is it on a Monday night? Like, why do we have to go back to work? But Smokey texted you here recently to ask you about that. And in this position that I'm in, I would love a Friday night game. That would be nice for me and just roll into the weekend. But there are reasons as to why that's not possible, right? I mean, is that just a dead zone for viewing? Is Monday night does it kind of have to be the night for the national championship game, in your opinion?
Well, I think it does, as long as there's football on NFL on Sunday. Right. So yeah, I wouldn't want to go against that. The Friday night stuff is not to get too wonky on you here, but the HUT levels, which is the number of TVs that are turned on any given day, is not great on a Friday. It's just one of the lowest nights of the week, if not the lowest night of the week. So to have the game on a Friday night is not necessarily ideal. You probably pick up a lot more viewing in bars though, but yeah. I think staying away from Friday nights is probably a good idea. I think there's some other things I'd certainly do before I schedule all in on Friday nights. I mean, Fox went to Friday nights with sports content primarily because they owned the rights already, and it was cheaper than developing some sitcom or scripted drama type show. So they went ahead and put some games there. But if you looked at what the games are, they didn't put any marquee matchup there because they know that the HUT levels are low as well.
In your opinion, because you, Jim Williams, Patrick Crates became incredible guests for us during the realignment crazy from Texas OU to USC, UCLA, and everything else in between. The Big 12, Arizona State, where you're right there in your backyard, made a great run. The Big 12 seemed to have a pretty successful season. How do you see them positioned now that they survived the changes and now moving forward?
That's an interesting question. I think it certainly helps that, ASU, which is probably their single largest market, it's as far as where school's located, did well. That was a great story, picked last and ended up winning the championship and then almost winning the first round playoff game. So I think that certainly helps. I think, you still have to play across the board a better level of football than they have. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the keys. I think, Brett's ideas as it relates to generating some private capital or private equity, whatever you want to call it. I think those are good ideas. I'm going to be interested to see how they are able to monetize that if they do go forward with that. From a basketball standpoint, the conference is clearly strong. I think they're beating up on each other a little bit, which is what's going to happen when you have a strong conference from top to bottom. So, I think they've positioned themselves real well. They're certainly, they're not at obviously the SEC or the Big Ten level, but I think them and the ACC, now that the ACC seems to be having some optics going forward as to what might happen there. I think the Big 12 is, solidly in that P4 level, and, they're just going to have to continue to invest and get better across the board.
I saw this note, and if you don't mind me bringing this up, ESPN will not renew their Formula One rights, right, which I think has been successful, has it not?
Yes, it has. I mean, it's not a big dollar item for them. I think the thing with F1 is it's very time zone challenged. most of the races come on in the middle of the night. Even the one out of Las Vegas, it used to have an 11 p.m. start time. So I think that's an issue. Look, it's a perfect example. You can't own everything. You just can't. You can't afford it. I think also maybe that the ESPN has their eyes on some other things that they might be rat holing some money, UFC or something like that. And I think that for somebody to come out and announce that they're not going to do it tells me that somebody's put a pretty hefty offer on the table, and ESPN's trying to get out in front of the news cycle and just letting everybody know they're not going to have it. And my guess is it's probably going to be, it sounds like Netflix is the group. Mm-hmm. And they would, and that makes sense. It's a real international property, Formula One. And if Netflix can buy the worldwide rights, that would be a win for them. I mean, that's a perfect type of sports property for them because of its popularity around the world.
You gave us the heads up to the regional sports networks and all the drama with them, Bally Sports or Fox, whatever it was, Fox Sports Southwest. Dallas-Fort Worth, other than the NFL, which is really national, Stars, Rangers, and Mavericks are now new models of how you can find them. And it can be frustrating for the fans, right, to where are they? You called this, didn't you, quite some time ago?
Well, it was really their only choice. So I think that Dallas and Phoenix are probably the most unusual in that the RSNs went away. I mean, we don't have one here in Phoenix anymore, and the one in Dallas is just kind of getting going. I guess the Rangers are kind of putting something together. I don't know what kind of distribution, if any, that they've reached an agreement with. But everybody else is either on some sort of a streaming app or on some package of games on over-the-air television. It's, from a financial standpoint, I can guarantee you the teams aren't doing as well. More people may be able to watch the games, and they might be selling more advertising, but their revenues are down because they're not getting, 20, 30, $70 million, in the case of some of the baseball teams that they were getting from the, the former Fox RSNs. I guess they're called FanDuel now. And that's going to take some years to recover from. And I think you'll see certain teams will react differently. Some will go all in and try and recreate the wheel. Others will just go streaming. Others, again, will try and do whatever they can with a over-the-air carrier. But that doesn't work in all markets. In many markets, there's just not enough stations.
Yeah, the Rangers are going to Victory Plus for their streaming, and they have 15 games on Nexstar Media Group, I guess out of the Dallas and Fort Worth area, that might be broadcasting some of their games. I mean this when I say it, but when you became a part of our show, thank God one day when I was watching my Twitter feed, I saw some of what you started to discuss with your opinion and your experience. I hate not having you on more often. I'm glad you reached back out to us. And thank you so much, Bob, as always.
My pleasure. I think it's, it's been kind of nice. Things have gone quiet. And I was telling somebody the other day I can crawl back under that rock I came out from. So
you sure did.
Till 20, about probably 2028, 29, when things start heating up with the next round of TV deals, which is always what starts the realignment discussions going hot and heavy. It's been kind of nice that the only thing we're talking about is, which team or which school the Mountain West Conference and the Pac-12 are going to add in order to get to the required number of football schools.
Yep. And the thing is, there are people that want us to talk about conference realignment, even if there's nothing to talk about, because it became like meth for the college football fans, like wanting to know what's going on.
Yeah, that's why I called it the crack cocaine.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, buddy. Hey, good to see you. Hit them straight next time you're on the course. I know you will.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Golly, Bob Thompson, great stuff. Former Fox Sports executive and president with us on the changes and also with this YouTube TV. I got YouTube TV. Stewart Mandel's next. My son-in-law, Daniel, the year that Alabama and Texas, it would have been 23, we're going to play. And he told me, you can't watch that for whatever. I don't know what it was because I have Spectrum. And he said, you're going to need to get YouTube. And it petrified me. And I love it. I have it in my bedroom. I get to watch Netflix. If I want to binge watch on a couple of shows, I have it downstairs in my split-level condo. I love YouTube TV. It has raised the rates a little bit. But I'm okay with it as of now.
Here's what they've done to me.
Is this a Sunday ticket stuff?
Well, I mean, it's not the Sunday ticket. I mean, that's all well and good. But for college football, being able to watch 4 games at once is you want to talk about crack cocaine. That's the thing. So, I love that. No one else has it.
They used to. Somebody used to do that.
But, yeah,
I think it was, you had PI. Remember Picture in Picture when that came out?
How much does it cost, though?
YouTube TV's now probably $83 or $79. I think I got in when it was $59. So in a couple of years.
So now,
but I think you would love, because all my apps and stuff are on there, which I know.
The problem is I have the complex I live is linked in to a cable, so there's a charge. And I don't know if I just say I don't have cable, but it's also connected to the internet, so it's
mine's internet.
I'd have to unravel some things, and I don't know if I'd be able to do that.
Yeah. So
I love it, and it took me a while to get used to it, and it scared me a few times. Oh my God, I'm gonna. But you can go anywhere.
Like a shark or something in the ocean.
But you can go anywhere. Like when we were at the Airbnb, thanks to Alan Samuel's House of Travel, you can log into whatever I can log into YouTube TV no matter where I am. That also, it kind of travels with you. When we come back, Stewart Mandel, theathletic.com, he did a massive mailbag. One of the questions for him was, why are you doing a mailbag on college football in February? And his response to that was just priceless. He goes, because you are reading the college football mailbag in February. He's next. This is 365 Sports.
Allen Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Allen Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Chuck Verno, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, who invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533. Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance has protected fellow Texans with auto, home, health, and life insurance since 1952. With more than 260,000 square miles of land and 27 million people, that's a lot to cover. Whether you're wrangling cattle or wrangling kids, we're proud to protect Texans in all Texan ways of life.
Call Deborah Holder at 254-300-7202 to see if you qualify to save up to 40% on your auto insurance.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Here we go, 365 Sports on this Valentine's Friday. Stewart Mandel, theathletic.com, had a mailbag. It was loaded today. Stewart, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul and David Smoak. I just read your last question, or somebody said, why are you doing a college football mailbag in February? And you said, because you are reading a college football mailbag in February. It's a 12-month-a-year sport now, isn't it?
I mean, the real answer is I like to get my paycheck. And I can't take February through July off. But I don't know. I thought that was a better answer.
Yeah, no, it was great. I loved it the way you wrapped it up. So you put together a tiers of in college sports, in college football in particular. How did you go about this? This is one of those off-season articles, and how deep into this, and what's been the reaction to it?
It was a unique question. I really liked it from a reader. Not so much rank the programs, rank them in terms of expectation level in this new 12-team playoff, where some programs, and pretty obvious who, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, their fans are expecting them to contend for a national title every year. But obviously it's not realistic for everybody. And so as we get into this new era, what's your reasonable expectation for your school? Do you expect to go to the playoff every year, every few years, once in a decade, once in a lifetime, as the bottom tier was? It was an interesting thought exercise.
So, Stewart, we haven't had you on since before the playoff. How would you grade year one?
Oh, great question. Like a B+. I mean, I think for the most part, it achieved what it was designed to do. For so many years, fans complained that the 4-team playoff had grown stale because you really had a small handful of programs dominate it. And so to have Indiana and SMU, Arizona State kind of get their moment in the sun, I thought was really cool. Obviously, it's two, blue bloods that ended up in the championship. That's not surprising. I think the only downer was that and I had this concern going into it, is it dragged on so long into January that I kind of felt the momentum sap a little bit after, once we got into the later rounds, and the TV rating reflected that. It was surprisingly low.
Stewart, do you think we're going to continue talking about Arizona State, not on they win the Big 12 and are in the playoff every year level, but do you think they're a bigger part of the conversation moving forward than they've been for, the majority of most people watching college football's lifetimes?
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely got the pieces in place to continue it under Kenny Dillingham. They lose now the heart and soul of the team, obviously, in Cam Scatterboot, but they bring almost everybody back, including Sam Levitt. I think the interesting thing about the new Big 12 is that there is no alpha. There's so many programs that have a chance in a given year to be that team that wins and goes to the playoff. And so is it realistic that ASU is going to do that every year? No, because there's too many other good programs in that conference. I'm interested to see how it evolves, right? Will we see, whether it's ASU, whether it's TCU, Baylor, whoever, is going to be like the team that wins 10 games every year? Or is it going to swing wildly from year to year, basically based on, first and foremost, who you draw on your schedule in a given year?
Of the teams in the Big 12, going back to your tiers of expectations in college football, the teams you have, which is tier number 3, is you have TCU, Utah, from the Big 12. And then I don't know where Arizona State might be in this. I didn't see if they were higher or not. But in the Big 12, would you think most programs be happy if they made the college football playoff about every 5 to 8 years? Would that be enough?
That tier that you just said, I had, he said every 5-ish years. I changed it to every 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And those two stood out to me because they have, for so long, going back to the Mountain West, had these teams that played in the Rose Bowl and played in the for the Fiesta Bowl, and had TCU went to the national championship game a couple of years ago. So I think of all those programs, they would probably be, I guess, the ones that would be most disappointed if they went more than 5 years without making the playoff. But I don't know that there's all that much difference. I don't know that there's many programs in the Big 12 that would be happy to just go once every 20 years. These are all programs that have had the only one that frankly hadn't had recent success was Colorado until last year, right? So now even they have hope that they can be a contender.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. But I would say, like, for example, I'm a lifelong Nebraska fan, and I also know what is realistic. Hell, they barely made it to a bowl game and had to win a game down the stretch to do it. But every 10 years, it's crazy to think that way, but I would not be happy, but I would take it based on how much of a drought they've been in now for about a decade and a half.
Yeah, I mean, given the last, I would say, 20 years at this point of Nebraska football, there's been really no indication. I mean, I think most Nebraska fans have accepted that the 90s is not going to come back. So then what's the new reality? And I think ideally, if you're a Nebraska fan, that new reality should be, why aren't we – there's no reason why Nebraska shouldn't be able to do what Wisconsin's done, what Iowa does, like these programs that are consistently good and rise up every so often and have like the Iowa Rose Bowl season, or Wisconsin certainly, come close to the playing for a national title in a playoff. But it just hasn't been any sign recently that they can do that.
Stewart Mandel, The Athletic, with us on 365 Sports.
Stewart, you also answered a question about the ACC and their erstwhile lawsuit twins in Florida State and Clemson. Of course, this week we found out that North Carolina has taken a quieter tact and had like a secret code name project to figure out what their move would be should that happen. Do you think that, because it doesn't appear that anybody has anywhere to go right now, that the best case scenario for both sides is to come to a settlement where maybe when the TV deals are up, there's a much lower penalty, if one at all?
Yeah, I think so many in realignment, it's just crazy to me how many times these schools make decisions based out of panic. And I think after the Pac-12 shakeup, a lot of ACC schools said, well, that could happen to us. We could be on the wrong end of that. And so they go out and hire lawyers like UNC did and whatnot. But FSU and Clemson took it to an extreme. And it just, as we get a little more removed, I think it's been more than a year now since they filed those lawsuits. where are they going to go? It's pretty obvious there's no exit. There's been no indication they get out of the grant of rights, much less go somewhere else. And so I think we are heading toward a moment here pretty soon where there's some sort of settlement, or maybe they all just agree to withdraw their lawsuits. I don't know. And the win, I guess, in the end for FSU and Clemson would be if they do achieve what they asked for originally and get more uneven revenue distribution going toward them.
Stewart, what did you think of Ohio State's hire of Matt Patricia to replace Jim Knowles?
Honestly, that was a weird one. And, yeah, I mean, I will say we have seen in the last few years an influx of, or I would say college teams hiring NFL defensive coordinators. Like that's the Michigan, succession plan recently. Washington's doing it and so on. And obviously UNC is doing it to a high degree, and it's working. I mean, a lot of these guys come in and they're very successful. So I get that. But he was not the most popular guy, right? As the head coach of the Lions and towards the end there in Philly. So given Ryan Day has the resources and obviously the cachet at Ohio State to attract just about anybody, I was definitely surprised by that hire.
Man, I tell you what, you win at that level. Saban had to replace guys all the time, and now we see some of these big schools doing it, and then Penn State looks like they're going even further all in. What are your thoughts about, there's been a couple of stories out there today, and one that we even had Kansas State's Chris Kleiman mentioned to us back last summer in Vegas about college football spring, because of tampering the portal, going to maybe more of an NFL-style OTA-type model in the summer.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be gaining steam. I'm not really sure what the mechanism is to do that. Like, who would have to approve that, or can you just go and do it? If you're, as Matt Rule, who kind of was public about that, can you just decide we're scrapping it and doing OTAs? But, it is interesting. I used to always hear coaches complain about the fact that their spring games were televised, but that was mostly about they didn't want to, if you're installing a new offense, you don't want the teams you're going to play to see it. So they would go really vanilla in the spring game. But this idea that there is a spring portal window and that they can just watch these games and say, we're going to go after that guy, I frankly hadn't really thought about that until recently. But there's more reasons than just that. I mean, I just think the spring football model is a little bit outdated. And now that you have that spring portal window, it would make sense to, frankly, the whole calendar needs to be revised, right? I've even heard possibility that you could do away with the winter, the December portal and just do one big one in the spring. So I think a lot of things have to be worked out. But in the meantime, if you're Nebraska, if you're Kansas State and you want to do that, just do it and see what happens.
Stewart, what do you think? I mean, you said the big portal window in the spring. Would that be after an OTA, before an OTA? Like, again, I guess it's just trying to figure out this calendar, which
I don't think anybody thought that through.
Yeah.
I don't even really think you can get rid of the winter window because of the academic calendar.
Mm-hmm.
If guys know after the season, I'm out of here, then they want to be able to go enroll at their new school in time to compete in spring practice. I don't think you can say, no, you got to wait till the spring, and by then it'll be too late to do whatever spring football becomes. But to really, I think college leaders are trying to figure out a way to slow down the portal. And now that, if the House settlement comes through and you can start actually making contracts with players, let's say they're not employment agreements, hint, hint, but they really are. Then I think you could start to put some of those things in place. Like, you've agreed to a deal and you're here through X date, which might include the end of the season. But until then, I think it would be hard to pull off the getting rid of the December portal.
Yeah, because hell, it'll be some kind of lawsuit anyway, because then it'll get shut down. What were your thoughts about the way that ESPN handled the playoff? And your thoughts? And there's no reason why they would ever give it up. That's one of their money cows, along with the NFL. Would it help if that playoff ever became like the NFL on different networks?
I think a lot of people thought that was going to happen with the new contract. And then ESPN, there wasn't as much interest, I think, as they thought there would be from other networks. So ESPN got it. Now, ESPN, they sub-licensed a couple games to TNT. Theoretically, they could do that to CBS or NBC or somebody. But in the meantime, I think what's going to be cool is it's been, we're 11 years into this contract, and throughout the time, the games have always been on ESPN, the cable channel. And it was just bad timing that they did that deal, and then cable kind of fell apart. So starting in 26, I think they'll start putting a lot of those games on ABC.
Yeah.
And that'll obviously get a lot more reach. And, I think that will help, even if it's not the original. I think Kevin Warren type vision was that the playoff would be a lot like his conference's new deal, where you have 3 different networks, like the NFL, like you said.
Stewart, it's great to have you. We appreciate it when we can get you on, and you know what we think about the Athletic with what Bruce does, and we have Sam Kahn on a lot. In fact, he was on earlier today. We appreciate not a partnership, but the fact we have a great relationship with what you guys do. Keep it up.
Yeah, we really appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you. Stewart Mandel, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports. And a lot of go-to people. We had Manny Navarro recently, who covered Miami. Now he covers college football for theathletic.com. A lot of different writers who do. I don't know how this got brought up, and we got to go to Paul's top 5, but smoking cigarettes in sports. Y'all ever remember the famous shot of Len Dawson?
Yeah.
Of the Chiefs smoking a cigarette
and drinking a
on the
Fresca.
bench. And drinking a Fresca on the bench in the side.
Yeah.
And he was great.
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer, I believe, and won a Super Bowl. It was the second AFC team to win it.
Well, part of that is that everyone else was smoking too.
No, yeah.
I mean, so it was a level playing field of guys who were smoking.
Red Auerbach on the bench inside of an arena at the Boston
Well, and then
Garden.
the thing is that half Boston Garden's like, let's go, Bill.
Watched Arnold Palmer at the Legends Golf Classic at Onion Creek Golf Course one time in Austin. He's just like piping it out, smoking it away. There's a girl golfer, an LPGA golfer, Charlie Hull, who went over to the gallery one time during a tournament, and she goes, "You got one? You got a stick?" And she lit it up and smoked it for about 15 or 20 yards strides, and then got rid of it.
Now what they've started to do marketing-wise is nicotine. You know what nicotine is? Nicotine's the thing that hooks you on cigarettes. That is why you are hooked on cigarettes. That is why you are hooked on it's not tobacco. It's the nicotine. Nicotine is a drug, and it hooks you. And so now what they started doing is, well, you're not smoking. Here's this nicotine pouch, just pop it in your mouth.
Oh.
And the thing is as somebody who knows, you're just doing another addiction, and you're not breaking the cycle. You don't smell like smoke, and your hands don't smell like it, and yet you're still paying money for this other nicotine thing that's doing the exact same thing.
Yep.
And the reason why you need another one is because the moment that cig or pouch or whatever runs out, the moment it runs out, your body starts going tick, 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 tick of I'm at 100%, and then it starts dropping because then it starts wanting nicotine. And that's the craving that you then get. So, yeah, now you can stop smoking, but now you're spending thousands of dollars on these pouches. But there is, and Joe Rogan, which, look, man, I listen to plenty of his shows. There's a lot of stuff out there that's very enlightening. There's a lot of stuff that's just, there's people who are just absolute BSers. But I do know from him, it's take from it what you want to, do your own research, and there's very interesting things, and sometimes I'm just like, this person is an idiot or whatever. But I do remember a conversation he had where he was talking about how he occasionally would smoke a cigarette before a set, because there is apparently medical tests that have been done that say nicotine can help you focus. But it doesn't mean you go smoke cigarettes so that you can focus all the time. But he's talked about doing that on occasion, so it's fine so long as you don't get hooked onto it. But yeah, that nicotine's what'll get you in there. And that's also what provided the backdrop, speaking of cigarettes, is the hazy backdrop of the old basketball gyms, or you watch old NBA games or something, and there's this fog in the Boston Garden. You're like, what is that? It's that's all the cigarette smoke from everybody sitting in the stands. But it makes it look kind of cool, especially when it's black and white. But that fog or that haze,
it looks like a
that's
haze
cigarette smoke.
Coming off the lake early in the morning.
I remember when I started watching Mad Men, which, Craig, have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I didn't watch it all the way through, but I've watched it.
I love Mad Men, And like Mad Men, they just drank and smoke all day.
Oh yeah,
and
all
like
day.
that wasn't like, maybe it might have been a little trumped up in those particular characters, but that was kind of how it was in the Madison Avenue in the '60s. And all I could think of the whole time is like, man, it must reek in that office.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
yeah, with all that smoking and all the drinking. Yeah, like 8 a.m. like popping your first scotch of the day. Like, yeah, that's definitely played up because they would have been assed out by like 2 o'clock every afternoon.
But that's the thing. Like John Hamm's character often was.
Yeah, you know.
Like,
yeah,
so like
exactly.
they'd go in and be like, Don Chrysler's here, and like
halfway through,
he's like his secretary's got to like wake him up, and he's like, all right. And,
but there is you're right. There is like a marketing part of the nicotine though to what we started originally talking about of like that little bit of extra focus bump that it can give you. So maybe that's what she was doing, or maybe she's just a smoker and she just needed her little fix real quick. I don't know.
When Tiger won his last Masters, and I've seen Mickelson, both of them started to have is it CBD bubble gum?
I don't know about that, but
calms your nerves or whatever, which, they're very strict. The PGA Tour are on, PEDs, etc. But there were thoughts that there's a gum that you could chew that was not nicotine, though, but it was a CBD.
It sounds like weed gum. That's what it sounds like. But, yeah, I'm sure there's some element of, like, it's only 0.08%, and so it technically falls under the threshold, but it pretty much sounds like, hey, here's how much we can pack in from real weed that doesn't cross the legal threshold. Yeah.
Speaking of which, how did Garrett and Emery get through customs on the way back from New Orleans to Dallas at Love Field?
No, let me tell you about Emery. Emery, you've painted this picture of Emery. Emery went to Colorado 3 times since I've known him and never once brought us anything back.
The way you talk about it, I don't think he's like Bob Marley's long-lost son or something.
No, like Emery,
or Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, no. Emery
no. We know, all 3 of you heathens, when we were in Phoenix, you went down to the corner one night.
No, he wasn't in Phoenix.
Narc.
Yeah. No, we did to
get a Diet Coke.
We know who told back in high school, boys, don't we?
Yeah. Look, I'll just tell you that Garrett and I, our Airbnb was right next to a dispensary. I'd never been in a legal dispensary before. I considered it an educational opportunity.
I thought a dispensary was like a little clinic, like a health clinic or something.
But it depends on what state you're in.
Can be if it helps you
Garrett,
with your aches and pains.
Just so I know the next time. By the way, again, thanks to Alan Samuels' House of Travel. Craig wasn't on the trip, but I'm telling you, was that not awesome?
It was badass. I really enjoyed it. The house was awesome. Everything was awesome.
5 bedrooms in a full bathroom, right, in every one of the bedrooms, and it was long on the second floor of this old building that they had renovated. It was amazing, thanks to Bill Denton and Alan Samuels' House of Travel with what they do. But I was wondering about that. I was bad. I didn't feel good. I was like, I wish I would have had some weed to kind of calm me down.
You probably should have, based on like how much pain you were in. Like, I wish you would have.
When I got back, I got that stuff that my brother, when he was really struggling with his cancer, I nibbled on. It was called For Bad Days. You've heard me promote it. But one time I took too much of it, and I was stoned here on the show.
No, that's fine.
No, it's not fine.
Smokey, here's the thing. I think you have a very antiquated view of what marijuana used to be and what it is now. Like, here's the thing. As they legalize it, here's the cool part about it. All across it, like, you can just go to a guy who's a botanist who figures out how to make weed that tastes like ice cream and just
You mean Jake Plummer?
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean the mushrooms, but, like, yeah. So,
I mean, I'm all for, the open-mindedness of it. It's not the way that it was talked about like in the 1960s or whatever, but I definitely don't think there's like no downfall to it. I definitely think
just like anything.
But yeah, it's all about moderation and how smart you are with what you're doing.
Ask, there's people that probably have too much protein powder that they think they're healthy, and it's wrecking their kidneys or something like that. So it's everything in moderation.
Yeah, I think it's like anything else, but I think the whole industry is just taking off to the point you're talking freaking CBD whatevers or and all that. So yeah, maybe going back to the beginning of like I've heard Rogan talk about it. I've heard a couple of other athletes, and I know there's some athletes that like during their off season they'll like sneak one. And there's people who like drink and then like once every 6 months they'll have like a cigarette at the end of the night or something. Yeah. So maybe that's. Yeah. She just needed a little extra focus is what that was.
By the way, this hat that's on the set, Wounded Warrior Project, that from BJ Ganem and all the guests that we had down at the Radio Row at the Super Bowl in New Orleans, and we appreciated the Navy, 2 commanders.
Yeah,
Naval commanders.
Yeah,
Naval Academy graduate commanders.
Like I wanted to ask them, like, hey, can I just come and like just steer? And they're gonna be like, No.
There's like some of them have like nuclear warheads on them.
Here's the thing: when you're doing like a missile test, I just come and hit one missile that's just going to explode in midair? Like, it's not going to hit anything or hurt anybody. I just want to do it one time.
I want to just play the role of Denzel in, was it Crimson Tide?
His stress. That was stressful. I want to maybe sit up in the tower and say, call the ball.
Yeah.
Like in Top Gun. Like, that would be fine.
I just loved having the military veterans and others, officers that were and enlisted were on the show with us down in New Orleans. We appreciate all of what they do. All right, 2 quick notes, and then we break for Paul's Top 5. Shaquille O'Neal has signed a long-term deal with TNT Sports that will pay him over $15 million a year. And, of course, they've continued that show with Ernie Johnson and Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley. And Shaquille actually popped off on his contract. They're not going to fire me anyway, so that's good news.
No, it's not. I think he is one of the worst analysts in all of sports broadcasting. I think he's absolutely terrible. I think he's
camaraderie they have.
No, that's fine. I get why people watch it. I also think it sometimes can be a little bit overblown because I do think they can go a little bit too far and like let's just trash everything that's new and all of that. I enjoy those guys. I don't enjoy particularly listening to Shaq. I've just never really enjoyed him. I mean, his credentials speak for themselves on the court. Off the court as a businessman, he's like the new Magic Johnson in a lot of ways with all of his hands in these various business pots. I respect the hell out of that. I think he's terrible as a desk guy compared to the other guys on that.
Yeah,
on that
Kenny
table.
Smith and Charles Barkley. And who did they have that was where Shaq was? Was there somebody, another former
player? They had like
player?
a rotating thing, I think, for a while. I don't remember.
But Kenny Smith and Shaq, they
everything's
pound
changing
each other
with the NBA next year.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, he's a big star. I get it. And I get that's probably what he'd be worth. I just don't think he's very good at it. I think he's hard to listen to, honestly.
His voice is almost a little bit too hollow and deep.
Yeah.
And then Noah Lyles. He's pretty good, right? The gold medalist sprinter. And Dolphins receiver Tyreek Hill will finally have some sort of race. I will say this, and I know Tyreek Hill is the cheetah. Noah Lyles would blow him away.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it just so that someone has to eat some humble pie there. But
it depends on when they're training and when they run the race because of what Hill's got to do, but also with what Noah Lyles does as an international track athlete.
Well, I'm sure Dolphins fans are thrilled with that.
Yeah, I know.
I'm glad to see it just so somebody will eat some pie, some humble pie. So either the NFLers will shut up for a while on how they're faster than the track guys, or the track guys might have to go, oh, damn, like this is a closer thing than we thought. The NFL guys are pretty damn fast. I'm interested in that as kind of a sideshow thing, and I'm sure it'll deliver for the 10 seconds that it lasts. But I'm glad there's just like no more talking. You're actually going to go out and do it and see who's who and what's what.
You know, sometimes it's been like in horse racing, they've had these match races, and it's like ended in tragedy with a horse that breaks a leg or whatever, and you know it have to happen. They have to be put to sleep. All right, Darryl Green, the two former Olympic gold medalists. Remember when he did the fastest man deal and beat Ron Brown, I think, in the final one year, who played for the Raiders, was a great track star. Paul Catalina's top 5.
And scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
There are hundreds of things that can affect our sleep, but what's affecting yours? Sleep Doctor's Home Sleep Test brings the precision of a sleep lab into the comfort of home to help you get answers and unlock a lifetime of great sleep. Start now at sleepdoctor.com/TV.
Time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5.
let's talk about the deepest position in the draft. Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com says there are 24 NFL starters at defensive tackle in this draft. By far the deepest position. I'm just going to give you 5 of them, but there are 19 more. So if you don't get one of these 5 and you don't get one of the other 19, you either don't need one or your general manager's a doofus. Number 5, Derek Harmon from Oregon. Best defensive lineman by a lot of measurables in the Big Ten this year, although I have a couple other Big Ten linemen ahead of him just for different reasons. I really like Derek Harmon. I think that the distance from 1 to 5 on this list, and honestly from 1 to 10, is not really all that great. It is a very, very close class. Like, there are guys who didn't make this list, like Deion Walker from Kentucky, who's a huge space-eating guy. Josh Farmer from Florida State, who had a little bit of up and down season this past year, but certainly an NFL player. Derek Harmon, Oregon, checks every box. Run stopper, gets after the quarterback, eats up 2 blockers most of the time. That is a dude right there. Number 4, Tyreek Williams from Ohio State. One of the dark horse biggest keeps for Ohio State last year. He had a shot to go in the draft in 2024. Decided not to and stayed and was a part of that national championship run. And when you put him in that line with Tuia Olamau and Jack Sawyer, you got lethal pass rush and run defense. That's how they were able to stamp out Notre Dame in the national title game. This guy had big games almost every week. He's a run stuffer. He's a pass rusher. Every single thing you want. Tyreek Williams from Ohio State. Number 3, Kenneth Grant from Michigan. A lot of Big Ten dudes on this list. In fact, at least 4. Almost, actually, 4. 4 Big Ten guys and an SEC guy. Big Ten dominating on the defensive line now in college football, which is not a surprise considering they've had the last 2 national champions in Michigan, Kenneth Grant's school, and Ohio State, Tyreek Williams' school. He's not even the best defensive tackle from his own team, but won a national title, was a huge part of the team this year that was able to make a bowl game in spite of the fact that, I say this over and over again, they had no functional human quarterback. It was not a thing that they had. Kenneth Grant was a huge part of why that defense was so dominant and able to keep Michigan in games without any kind of real offense. Number 2, Walter Nolan, Ole Miss, formerly of Texas A&M, one of my favorite players in this year's draft. He's a unicorn size-wise, where he's tall and big, but also, even though he's got a little bit of a punch here, kind of lean for a defensive tackle. He's fast. He gets after the quarterback. He is violent, and he was the number 1 recruit in the country just 3 years ago. So you cannot go wrong putting Walter Nolan in the middle of your defense, a superb athlete that every single school in the country honestly would have kidnapped the first lady for. They would have done anything it took, held somebody for ransom, robbed a bank. They would have done all of that because Walter Nolan is that dude. And number 1, Mason Graham from Michigan. You've heard a lot about this guy. Top 5 ranked player by pretty much everybody, whether it's Jordan Reed or Matt Miller or Dane Brugler or Mel Kiper. They have him in their top 5 available players for the draft. Does he go top 5? I don't know. The Patriots at 4 make a lot of sense for picking him up. We don't know what they're going to do. Their bigger problems are on offense. But Mason Graham, dominant. As a matter of fact, the Cowboys drafted Mozzie Smith a couple years ago. I think they thought Mozzie was better because of the other 2 guys that are on this list in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Those are the real 2 dudes, especially this guy right here. Someone you do not want to mess with, was on top of my dudes list this year. Mason Graham from Michigan, the number 1 overall defensive tackle. That is the last of the top 5 for today. That's the end of the show. Smokey, I've got a pee, so please say goodbye.
What the hell, man? What has happened to you?
Well, why?
Your endings used to be like a little bit of stand-up comedy, and now they're just like, that's just offensive to a lot of people who might have to pee too. And now
now you're holding
look at me. I don't even have a prostate anymore.
Yeah,
so you can imagine.
All of us are holding our urine.
All right. Thank you to Andrew, the silent assassin, for being with us today. Sometimes forget he's here, and that's the way he likes it. Emery Winter. who I grouped in with some bad people on our flight back from New Orleans. I'm sorry that I put you and threw you under the bus. And then Garrett Ross is bad people. Enjoy what you have, Garrett, this weekend. I know you will. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Corey is in the studio with us today as well. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. Enjoy all of what you have coming up today and the rest of the weekend. I'm David Smoak. Good night on 365 Sports.